Some people would call Victoria Hale reckless for bringing a homeless black man into her mansion. Others would call her compassionate. But if she had known who Marcus Reed really was, and why powerful men had spent 3 years making sure he stayed invisible, she might never have unlocked her car door. At 38, Victoria Hale possessed almost everything money could buy. Her name appeared on magazine covers beside phrases such as America's most powerful female CEO and the billionaire woman rebuilding Chicago. She owned a technology conglomerate valued at $6.4 billion, a private jet she rarely used, and a limestone mansion overlooking Lake Michigan. Yet on the coldest night of the year, she found herself sitting alone inside Hale Meridian Tower, watching snow erase the city below. Most of the 62-story building had gone dark hours earlier. Only the executive floor remained illuminated, floating above Chicago like a glass island in the clouds. Beyond the windows, traffic crawled through the storm. Headlights shimmered beneath falling snow before vanishing into the white darkness. Victoria stood behind her desk, with one hand resting against the glass. On the television mounted across the room, a business reporter discussed Hale Meridian's proposed acquisition of North Star Urban Systems. The deal would give Victoria access to a revolutionary energy management platform capable of reducing electricity consumption across entire neighborhoods. It would also make her enemies richer. The board is reportedly divided, the reporter said. Several investors have questioned whether Victoria Hale's leadership has become too personal and unpredictable following her father's death. Victoria muted the television. Her father had been dead for 4 years. Yet people still used his death to explain every decision she made. If she expanded the company, she was trying to prove herself to him. If she rejected an acquisition, grief had made her irrational. If she showed compassion, she was emotionally unstable. If she showed strength, she was cold. No one ever suggested that she might simply know what she was doing. A knock sounded at the open door. Her chief of staff, Elena Marquez, entered wearing a charcoal coat over her navy suit. At 45, Elena was one of the few people who spoke to Victoria without fear or flattery. "The roads are getting worse," Elena said. "Your driver has been waiting downstairs for 40 minutes. I told Daniel he could leave, and Daniel wisely ignored you." Victoria returned to her desk. Several confidential reports covered its polished surface, but one document remained separated from the others, a photograph of a man in an expensive gray suit. Graham Vail, chief executive of Vail Dynamics and the public face of North Star Urban Systems. He was handsome in a deliberate, carefully manufactured way. Silver at the temples, calm blue eyes, a reassuring smile that never touched them. According to the proposal, Graham wanted to sell North Star to Hale Meridian for $780 million. According to Victoria's analysts, it could be worth twice that amount within 5 years. According to her instincts, something was wrong. Elena, who created North Star's original adaptive grid architecture, the official filings credit the Vail Dynamics engineering team. "I didn't ask what the filings say." Elena studied her for a moment. "We've been through this. The early patents list 3 developers, but 2 later transferred their rights to Vail. The third name was removed after a legal settlement." "What name?" "We haven't found it. A person develops a platform that could transform urban energy use, transfers nothing, and then disappears from every corporate record. It happens more often than it should." "People don't disappear, Elena. They're removed." Elena glanced toward the storm. "We can continue removing people from corporate records tomorrow. Tonight, I would prefer to remove you from this building before we're both trapped here." Despite herself, Victoria smiled. She closed the North Star file and placed it in her briefcase. As they walked toward the private elevator, Elena asked, "Are you going to the foundation dinner on Friday?" "No. You're giving them $12 million. That should excuse me from eating dry salmon beside people who want to ask why I'm unmarried." "They may ask why you're unmarried, because you keep rejecting every invitation containing another human being. I attend meetings. Those aren't dates. Sometimes they last 3 hours and end in disappointment. The distinction seems minor. Elena laughed as the elevator doors opened. They descended in silence. 50 floors below, the city gradually rose around them. Victoria caught her reflection in the mirrored wall. Tailored cream suit, black wool coat, dark hair pinned neatly behind her head. Every detail suggested discipline and control. Only her eyes betrayed exhaustion. The lobby was nearly empty when they emerged. A security guard waited near the revolving doors while the storm pressed white sheets of snow against the glass. Daniel stood beside Victoria's black sedan under the covered entrance. He opened the rear door as soon as he saw her. "Miss Hale, Lakeshore Drive is barely moving," he warned. "We may have to take Michigan Avenue South and circle back. I'll drive myself." Daniel's expression tightened. "That's not a good idea. My apartment is 12 minutes away. In normal weather, you should go home to your family. My job is to get you home safely, and my decision is that you've worked enough." Daniel looked toward Elena for support. She lifted both hands. "I tried." Victoria took the keys from him. He objected twice more before finally accepting that she would not change her mind. 10 minutes later, she regretted the decision. The storm swallowed entire blocks. Snow gathered against the windshield faster than the wipers could clear it. Cars moved in cautious lines through intersections where traffic signals had become blurred patches of red and green. Victoria's penthouse apartment was closer, but she changed direction and headed north toward the mansion. She needed distance from the office, and the old house was one of the few places where she could occasionally remember what silence felt like. Her father had purchased it when she was 12. After his death, every room became a museum of unfinished conversations. She stopped at a red light near an elevated train station. The sidewalks were nearly deserted. A convenience store owner pulled down a metal security gate while 2 sanitation workers struggled to free a truck from the snow. Then Victoria saw the man. He was sitting beneath the narrow shelter of a closed pharmacy, his back against the brick wall. Snow had collected on the shoulders of his thin military-style jacket. A worn canvas bag rested beside him. He was black, perhaps 40 years old, though the cold and the heavy beard made him appear older. His trousers were soaked to the knees. His boots looked as if they had been repaired with tape. He was not holding a sign. He was not asking anyone for money. He was staring at a young woman standing 20 feet away. The woman wore medical scrubs beneath an open winter coat. She was searching frantically through her purse while her phone lay in the snow near her feet. A bus was approaching the intersection. The homeless man rose. At first, Victoria thought he intended to approach the woman for help. Instead, he walked into the street, retrieved the phone moments before the bus passed, and returned it to her. The woman stepped backward when she saw him. Even from inside the car, Victoria recognized the movement. Suspicion first. Gratitude second. The man said something Victoria could not hear. He placed the phone on the bench rather than handing it directly to the woman. Then he returned to the pharmacy wall. The nurse picked it up. She looked embarrassed, but the traffic light changed before Victoria could see whether she thanked him. A horn sounded behind her. Victoria drove forward. 2 blocks later, she told herself not to think about him. Chicago had thousands of people sleeping without permanent shelter. She funded housing programs, medical clinics, and employment initiatives. Her foundation had opened 2 emergency centers that winter alone. She could not personally rescue every stranger she passed. Another block disappeared behind her. Then she noticed the temperature displayed on the dashboard. 4 degrees Fahrenheit. With the wind chill, it felt far colder. Victoria tightened her grip on the steering wheel. She remembered being 14, sitting in her father's car on a winter morning. A man had been standing near the highway exit with a cardboard sign. Her father had locked the doors and stared straight ahead. "Never open your window," he had told her. Need makes people unpredictable. Her mother had disagreed. Money makes people unpredictable too, she had said. The difference is that wealthy people are allowed to hide what they do. Victoria had never forgotten it. At the next intersection, she turned around. The man was still beneath the pharmacy shelter when she returned. The nurse was gone. Snow swept around him, and his head had fallen forward against his chest. Victoria stopped beside the curb and lowered the passenger window several inches. "Excuse me." He did not move. She called again, louder. His head lifted. Even through the snow, his eyes startled her. They were alert, clear, and intensely observant. Not the unfocused eyes she had expected from someone weakened by alcohol or drugs. "You can't stay out here," Victoria said. A faint smile crossed his face. That sounds less like concern and more like an executive order. His voice was deep and controlled. The language did not match the image she had formed of him. "There's an emergency shelter 6 blocks west. It's full. The South Harbor Center has overflow beds. They stopped intake at 7. Victoria glanced at the dashboard clock. It was 9:18. "How do you know?" "Because I walked there." The answer carried no anger, just fact. She looked at the canvas bag beside him. "Do you have somewhere else to go? If I did, I doubt I'd choose this pharmacy." Wind drove snow through the open window. Victoria pressed the button to raise it, then hesitated. She could call the police, but they might move him to another corner rather than find a bed. She could contact someone at her foundation, though reaching a director at this hour could take time, or she could leave. That was what every security expert in her life would advise. A wealthy woman alone at night should never invite an unknown man into her car. A female CEO with her public profile had even more reason to be careful. The man seemed to read the argument on her face. "You should go," he said. Victoria frowned. "Why?" "Because you want permission." Permission for what? To decide that stopping was enough. His directness irritated her because it was accurate. "You don't know anything about me. I know this car costs more than most houses. I know you're wearing a Hail Meridian access badge backward, which means you don't want people recognizing the logo. And I know you stopped twice. Once at the light, then again after convincing yourself not to care." Victoria instinctively touched the badge clipped to her coat. "What's your name?" The man looked toward the street. Marcus what?" "Reed." She searched her memory. The name meant nothing to her. "I'm Victoria." "I know." Her body stiffened. Marcus nodded toward a bus shelter advertisement across the street. Despite the snow, Victoria could see her own face beside the Hail Meridian logo. "You're difficult to avoid," he said. She released the breath she had been holding. "Get in." Marcus did not move. Victoria unlocked the door. "I can take you somewhere warm until we find an available shelter. You shouldn't invite strangers into your car. You just told me not to leave." "No, I told you that you wanted permission to leave. That isn't the same thing. Are you always this exhausting?" "Only when I'm freezing." For the first time, his expression softened. He picked up the canvas bag and approached the sedan. Before opening the door, he brushed as much snow from his clothing as possible. Then he lowered himself carefully into the passenger seat, keeping the wet bag between his boots. Warm air filled the car. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment. His jaw tightened as sensation returned to his hands. Victoria noticed several scars across his knuckles and a pale line disappearing beneath his left sleeve. She also noticed how he surveyed the interior. Mirrors, locks, dashboard, rear seats. It was not the nervous curiosity of a man inside an expensive vehicle. It looked more like a practiced security assessment. "Seatbelt," she said. He fastened it. Victoria pulled away from the curb. "Any preference?" she asked. "Hospital, police station, or hotel?" "No police." The answer came too quickly. "Why?" "Because I don't need to be arrested for existing in the wrong place." "I didn't say anything about arrest. You didn't have to." Victoria accepted the correction. A hospital? They'll keep me in the waiting room until they decide I'm not dying, then send me back outside. You might have hypothermia, I don't. You're shivering, that means my body is still doing its job. Again, the answer was unexpectedly precise. She studied him briefly. Medical training? Basic field medicine? Military? Marcus looked out the window. A long time ago. The conversation ended there. Victoria called the director of South Harbor Center through the car's speaker system. No one answered. She tried 2 other shelters and received recorded messages. At the 4th, a tired volunteer confirmed that every bed was occupied. We can place his name on tomorrow's list, the volunteer offered. That doesn't help him tonight. I'm sorry, ma'am. The temperature dropped too quickly. We're doing everything we can. Victoria ended the call. Marcus had said nothing throughout the conversation. There's a hotel near Water Tower Place, she said. I'll book you a room. They'll require identification. Do you have any? No. I can put the room in my name. They'll still ask who's staying. I own the hotel. That made him turn. Victoria allowed herself a small, humorless smile. Money occasionally solves practical problems. It also creates them. Do you reject every offer of help? Only the ones that become debts. This isn't a debt. Everything is a debt to people with money. The words struck harder than he could have known. Victoria's father had treated generosity like an investment. Every favor came with a future obligation. Every act of support created leverage. Even love had felt contractual in the Hale household. Not my money, she said quietly. Marcus looked at her. Aren't you? She almost ordered him out. Instead, she drove another half-mile before responding. No. But sometimes it's the only part of me people bother to see. Something changed in his expression. Not sympathy exactly, but recognition. The hotel entrance appeared ahead. 2 employees stood beneath a heated canopy, waiting to receive arriving guests. Victoria slowed, then she saw the police vehicles. 3 officers were questioning a man near the entrance, while a hotel employee pointed toward a shopping cart loaded with blankets. Another unhoused person stood against the wall with his hands raised. Marcus leaned away from this window. It was a subtle movement, but Victoria noticed. Do you have a warrant? She asked. No. Are the police looking for you? Not in the way you mean. What other way is there? Marcus stared at the flashing lights. Some people don't need warrants. Victoria pulled past the hotel, her concern sharpened into suspicion. Who are you, a man who needs somewhere warm? That answer was sufficient 10 minutes ago. And now? Now I know you have military training, no identification, an unusual understanding of corporate branding, and a fear of people who apparently operate outside the law. Marcus rested his hands on the canvas bag. Then let me out. In this weather, you've done more than most. I haven't done anything if you freeze half an hour later. That isn't your responsibility. Let me decide what my responsibility is. Their eyes met. For several seconds, the only sounds were the windshield wipers and the wind pushing against the car. Victoria made another turn. Where are we going? He asked. My house. No, I have a guest wing with a separate entrance. You can stay there tonight. In the morning, my foundation will find you proper accommodation. Mark shook his head. You don't know me. You warned me about that already. I mean it. So do I, Ms. Hale. You remembered my surname. It's on a 20-foot billboard. You can call me Victoria. He studied her with an intensity that made her feel as though she were being evaluated. Should be more careful, Victoria. Probably. Compassion without judgment can be dangerous. So can judgment without compassion. His gaze shifted away. For the first time since entering the car, Marcus had no answer. The Hale mansion stood behind iron gates on a quiet street near the lake. Built in the 1920s, it possessed none of the sleek modernity of Victoria's corporate tower. Its limestone walls, steep roof, and narrow windows gave it the solemn appearance of a private institution. The security camera recognized Victoria's license plate, and the gates opened. Marcus sat straighter as they'd followed the curved driveway. "This is your house? One of them." That phrase has never made anyone sound more approachable. It wasn't intended to. Only 2 people maintained the property full-time. Mrs. Evelyn Brooks, the house manager, lived in a separate cottage behind the garden. Her husband, Thomas, supervised security and maintenance. Victoria sent both of them a message before reaching the front entrance, explaining only that she had brought back a guest who needed the east wing. Thomas emerged before she stopped the car. He was a broad-shouldered black man in his early 60s, dressed in dark trousers and a heavy sweater. He had served in the Chicago Police Department for 27 years before working for the Hale family. His eyes moved immediately from Victoria to Marcus. "Everything all right, Ms. Hale?" "Yes." "Thomas, this is Marcus Reed. He needs a room for the night." Thomas's expression remained courteous, but his posture changed. Marcus noticed too. "I can leave," he said. Victoria switched off the engine. "No one is leaving." Thomas opened her door. "Mrs. Brooks is preparing the east suite. Thank you." When Marcus stepped out, he and Thomas looked at each other with the silent caution of 2 men accustomed to assessing danger. Then Thomas's attention dropped to Marcus's boots. A small symbol had been carved into the worn leather near the ankle, a shield crossed by 3 narrow lines. Thomas's face changed. The reaction lasted less than a second, but Victoria saw it. "Have we met?" Thomas asked. "No, sir," Marcus replied. "You serve? Army unit?" Marcus picked up his bag. "A long time ago. That wasn't the question." "Thomas," Victoria interrupted. He stepped back, though suspicion remained in his eyes. Mrs. Brooks opened the front door. She was a round, elegant woman with silver braids and a warmth that made even the enormous house feel less severe. Her gaze settled on Marcus's wet clothes. "Good Lord," she said. "Get that man inside before the cold finishes what the city started." Marcus entered reluctantly. The foyer's marble floor reflected the amber light of 2 chandeliers. Portraits of Victoria's ancestors lined the staircase. Generations of pale faces surrounded by carved frames, each one looking as if wealth had been both an achievement and a burden. Marcus paused beneath the portrait of Arthur Hale, Victoria's father. Arthur had been painted 6 months before his death. He stood beside a desk with one hand resting on a closed book, his expression stern but not unkind. Marcus stared at him too long. "Did you know my father?" Victoria asked. His eyes left the portrait. "No. You looked as though you recognized him. Everyone recognized Arthur Hale." That was true, but the answer felt prepared. Mrs. Brooks led Marcus through a hallway toward the east wing. Victoria and Thomas remained behind. "What did you see on his boot?" she asked. Thomas lowered his voice. "Old unit insignia, Army Cyber Command Support Group. Mostly intelligence, systems security, and field communications." He said he had military training. "That man wasn't regular infantry." "What does that mean?" "It means whatever story he gives you, verify it. Can you run his name?" "Not without more information. Do what you can." Thomas looked displeased. "You brought an unidentified man into your home before deciding to investigate him." "I didn't conduct a background check while he was freezing. You could have called me. And by the time you arrived?" Thomas exhaled. "I know why you stopped," he said. "But a kind decision can still be a dangerous one." Marcus said almost the same thing. "That should concern you." "It does. Then why is he here?" Victoria looked toward the east hallway. "Because he told me to leave him." Thomas frowned. "Someone trying to exploit me would have gotten into the car without hesitation," she continued. "He resisted the hotel. He resisted coming here. He warned me repeatedly. Or he understood that resistance would make you trust him." Victoria considered it. "That's why I have you." "No," Thomas said. You have me because your father understood that intelligence doesn't make people invulnerable. The mention of Arthur ended the conversation. Victoria removed her coat and entered the library. But she could not concentrate. She opened the North Star acquisition file, read the same paragraph 3 times, and finally closed it. From somewhere in the east wing came the low sound of pipes carrying hot water. She imagined Marcus standing beneath a shower, watching years of street dust disappear into a marble drain. The difference between their circumstances felt obscene. One locked gate separated a man who owned nothing from a woman who owned more rooms than she could use. 20 minutes later, Mrs. Brooks entered with his wet clothes folded over one arm. "He's thinner than he looks," she said. "I'm not sure that's a surprise. Cold hides many things." Mrs. Brooks placed the clothing near the fireplace. "I gave him some of Thomas's clothes. He asked whether he could work for the room." "What did you say?" I said surviving the night was enough work. Victoria smiled faintly. "He has a fever," Mrs. Brooks added. "Not high, but I'd like Dr. Patel to examine him. Call her." He refused. Of course he did. He also asked whether the house uses a Meridian V4 security network. Victoria looked up. "Why?" He said one of the sensors near the east entrance was malfunctioning. "That system doesn't malfunction." Mrs. Brooks raised an eyebrow. "Apparently it does." Victoria summoned Thomas. Together they checked the security console inside his office. A warning indicator flashed beside the east corridor. Thomas stared at it. "The sensor went offline at 8:42, he said. "The system didn't send an alert." "How did Marcus know?" "He said the status light was pulsing twice instead of once," Mrs. Brooks explained. Thomas pulled up the diagnostic history. "That pattern indicates a failed encryption handshake." Victoria's unease deepened. Could a homeless man with military communications experience recognize it maybe? But Meridian V4 is proprietary. The indicator sequence isn't in the public manual. Victoria thought of the North Star file in her briefcase. Both North Star and Meridian V4 used adaptive security architecture developed through Hale's Urban Systems division. "Ask him to come here," she said. A few minutes later, Marcus entered wearing a dark sweater and loose trousers borrowed from Thomas. Without the snow-covered jacket, he appeared younger, perhaps 42. His beard remained, but Mrs. Brooks had trimmed the uneven edges. His shoulders were broad, his posture straight. He did not look like a homeless man who had been rescued from a Chicago snowstorm. He looked like someone who had spent years pretending to be less dangerous than he was. Thomas pointed toward the monitor. "How did you identify that fault?" Marcus glanced at the screen. "The sensor light. You know what that pattern means? It usually means the device rejected a security certificate." "Usually." Marcus said nothing. Victoria stepped closer. "Have you worked with Meridian systems? I've worked with systems like them. There are no systems like Meridian V4. My company owns the architecture." A trace of bitterness entered his expression. "Companies own paperwork," he said. "People create architecture." The sentence struck Victoria with the force of recognition. She crossed the room, retrieved the North Star file, and removed the photograph of Graham Vale. "Do you know this man?" Marcus looked at the photograph. Every muscle in his face became still. It was not confusion. It was control. "No," he said. Victoria placed the picture on the desk between them. "That was a lie." Marcus met her eyes. "Then why ask?" "Because I wanted to know whether you would tell me the truth. You brought me here for one night. You didn't purchase my history. No. But I have the right to know whether bringing you here puts anyone in danger." For a moment, the room held the tension of an interrogation. Then the security console emitted a sharp tone. Thomas turned toward the monitor. A black SUV had stopped outside the gates. Its license plates were obscured by snow. The headlights went dark, but no one exited. Thomas enlarged the camera image. Marcus moved behind him. How long has it been there? He asked. 20 seconds. Turn off the exterior lights. Thomas looked at him. Why? Because if they're here for the house, light helps them count windows. If they're here for me, it tells them they guessed correctly. Victoria's pulse quickened. Why would anyone be looking for you? Marcus stared at the vehicle on the screen. The passenger window descended. A small device appeared briefly in a gloved hand, pointed toward the mansion. Thomas reached beneath the desk and unlocked a drawer containing a handgun. Mrs. Brooks stepped closer to Victoria. The device flashed once, then the East Wing security grid failed. Camera feeds turned black one after another. Thomas swore and reached for his radio. Marcus did not appear surprised. He closed his eyes for a second, as if accepting the arrival of something he had spent years trying to outrun. When he opened them, the homeless man Victoria had found beneath the pharmacy shelter was gone. In his place stood someone calm, focused, and frighteningly prepared. Move everyone away from the windows, Marcus ordered. Thomas raised the handgun. You don't give orders in this house, then waste time arguing while they map your security system. Victoria stepped between them. Marcus, tell me who is outside. I don't know. Tell me who you are. He looked at her, and beneath his practiced control, she saw something she had not seen on the street. Fear. Not fear for himself, fear for her. My name really is Marcus Reed, he said. But 3 years ago, men far more powerful than Graham Vale paid millions of dollars to make the world believe Marcus Reed was dead. Outside the gates, the SUV's headlights came back on. The vehicle reversed slowly into the storm and disappeared. No one in the security room spoke. Victoria looked down at Graham Vale's photograph, then back at the stranger she had brought into her home. What does any of this have to do with my company? Marcus's answer was barely above a whisper. Everything. By midnight, the mansion had become a fortress. Thomas locked every exterior entrance, activated the backup security network, and contacted 2 former police officers who occasionally worked private protection for the Hale family. Neither man was told why his presence was required. They were simply instructed to patrol the grounds until sunrise. The black SUV did not return. That did nothing to ease Victoria's suspicion. She stood inside her father's library, facing the homeless black man she had taken home less than 2 hours earlier. Marcus Reed sat across from her in borrowed clothes, looking more like a reluctant witness than a rescued stranger. Thomas remained near the door, his handgun holstered beneath his sweater. Mrs. Brooks had gone to make coffee, though no one expected coffee to solve what had just happened. Victoria placed Graham Vale's photograph on the table. You said your name was Marcus Reed, and that powerful men paid to make the world believe you were dead. That's correct. Then explain it. Marcus studied the fire. If I tell you everything tonight, you won't believe me. You're inside my house. Someone may have followed you here and disabled my security system. Belief is no longer the requirement. Information is. I can't give you all of it. Can't or won't, Thomas stepped forward. Then you can leave. Victoria looked at him sharply. He'll be detained the moment he steps beyond the gate, Thomas continued. We can contact federal authorities and let them determine who he is. No federal authorities, Marcus said. That wasn't a request. Call them, and by sunrise every file connected to my name will be gone. Thomas gave him a cold smile. You think highly of yourself. No, I think accurately of the people searching for me. Victoria opened her laptop. Let's begin with something simple. Your date of birth. Marcus hesitated. June 18th, 1984. Your place of birth, Detroit, social security number, I'm not giving you that. Then tell me where you served. United States Army, 780th Military Intelligence Brigade. Cyber Operations Support. Thomas's suspicion became more focused. How long? 8 years. Rank. Captain when I left. Why did you leave? My mother was dying. Marcus's tone changed on the final sentence. For the first time, he sounded less like a man defending classified information and more like a son remembering a wound. Victoria typed his name, birth year and military unit into several databases available through Hale Meridian's corporate security system. No matching record appeared. She tried variations. Marcus D. Reed, Marcus David Reed, M. Reed. Nothing. It says no person with your name served in that unit, she said. I told you, I was erased. You can't erase military service. You can seal it, corrupt it, move records between classified systems, create a dishonorable discharge under another service number, and a death certificate under the original. Why would anyone go to that trouble? Because killing a man can create questions. Discrediting him creates answers people are eager to believe. Victoria turned the laptop toward him. Prove one thing. Marcus looked at the screen. Tell me something verifiable, she said. One fact showing that you're more than an intelligent stranger with a dramatic story. He considered his options. Finally, he said, Open your North Star acquisition documents. Victoria's expression hardened. How do you know about the acquisition? Graham Vale's photograph was inside the file. She opened the digital proposal, but kept the laptop angled away from him. Go to Appendix 12, Marcus instructed. The energy routing projections. Victoria found the section. Look at the efficiency model for mixed-use buildings constructed before 1985. What am I looking for? The projected reduction is listed as 31%. Victoria read the table. It is. It's false. North Star's performance was independently verified. No, the hardware performance was verified. The projection assumes a data learning period of 90 days. Older buildings require at least 180 because their electrical loads are inconsistent. How could you know what assumptions their system uses? Because I wrote the original learning model. Silence settled over the library. Victoria glanced at Thomas before returning her attention to Marcus. You created North Star? Not North Star. The system North Star was built around. According to the filings, Graham Vale's engineering division developed it. According to legal filings, wealthy men create everything. Victoria heard the contempt in his words. You said companies own paperwork while people create architecture, because I learned that distinction at considerable cost. What was the system originally called? Aegis. The name stirred a distant memory. Victoria searched Hale Meridian's private patent database. Hundreds of entries appeared, most connected to defense systems, encrypted communications, and adaptive infrastructure. One result was different. Aegis distributed adaptive network application status, withdrawn, original filing date, September 14, 2015, inventor information, restricted. The filing had been submitted by a small company called Reed Applied Systems. Victoria clicked the corporate record. The page returned an error. She searched outside the company network. Reed Applied Systems had been registered in Delaware 11 years earlier and dissolved 3 years later. No executive names appeared in the public summary, but an archived technology article mentioned the company. The headline read, Unknown Detroit startup may have solved America's urban energy crisis. The article had been removed from the publisher's website. Only the first few sentences remained in a cached preview. Victoria read them aloud. Reed Applied Systems, founded by former Army cybersecurity specialist Marcus Reed, has developed an adaptive platform capable of coordinating electrical consumption across complex urban networks. She stopped. A thumbnail accompanied the article. The man in the photograph was clean-shaven and wore a dark suit. He was younger, heavier, and smiling beside a server rack, but the eyes were the same. Victoria turned the screen toward him. Marcus stared at the person he had once been. Thomas came closer. That article is 11 years old, Victoria said. If this is you, why does no current record exist? Because someone purchased the publication 6 months after the article appeared. Within a year, nearly every reference to Reed Applied Systems had been removed. Who purchased it? A Vale Dynamics subsidiary. Victoria looked again at Graham's photograph. Why? Marcus leaned back. Aegis wasn't only an energy management platform. Its core architecture could observe millions of separate decisions, recognize patterns, and redirect resources before a human operator knew there was a problem. Energy was simply the safest commercial application. What were the unsafe applications? Transportation control, financial market prediction, military logistics, autonomous targeting. Thomas understood first. A system capable of anticipating how an electrical grid will behave could anticipate how an enemy moves supplies, or where a city becomes vulnerable during an emergency, Marcus said, or which neighborhoods could be isolated by manipulating traffic, communication, and power. Victoria felt the room grow colder despite the fire. And Graham stole it. Graham was a junior investment director when I met him. His father, Malcolm Vale, controlled a defense contractor called Vale Strategic Solutions. They offered funding, government introductions, and access to testing facilities. You accepted. I had 12 employees and less than 3 months of operating capital. My mother's medical bills were consuming everything I had. Yes, I accepted. Marcus's admission contained no attempt to excuse himself. What happened? Victoria asked. They wanted military exclusivity. I refused. Aegis was supposed to protect civilian infrastructure, not become a weapon. 3 weeks later, the government opened an investigation into Reed Applied Systems for mishandling classified data. Were you guilty? Can you prove it? I could then, and now. The evidence disappeared with everything else. Mrs. Brooks entered carrying coffee, but stopped when she sensed the atmosphere. Victoria continued. How did you go from being investigated to officially dead? Marcus looked toward the portrait of Arthur Hale. Your father entered the story. Every person in the room became still. Victoria slowly closed the laptop. You told me you didn't know him. I said everyone knew Arthur Hale. That was not an answer. No. It was an evasion. Why? Because you had just brought me into his house. My house. Marcus inclined his head. Then you should understand why I needed to know whether it truly belonged to you. Anger rose through Victoria's exhaustion. What did my father do? He arranged a meeting. When? November 2017. He contacted me through an intermediary and claimed he had discovered irregularities in the government's case. He believed Vale Strategic Solutions was using shell companies to transfer components of Aegis into private defense programs. That sounds like something my father would have reported. He intended to. At least, that was what he told me. Victoria stood. What are you suggesting? I'm telling you what happened. You're implying that my father helped steal your company. I'm not. Then be precise. Marcus met her eyes. Arthur Hale tried to help me expose the theft. The answer drained some of the anger from her, replacing it with dread. He arranged for us to meet at a private airfield outside Washington, Marcus continued. He had documents connecting Graham Vale's father to senior officials inside the procurement office. Arthur said Hale Meridian had unknowingly supplied hardware used in an unauthorized Aegis prototype. Victoria remembered the official account of her father's final year. He had become secretive and increasingly suspicious of several longtime business partners. The board attributed his behavior to stress. 6 months later, his private aircraft had crashed after taking off from Toronto. The investigators blamed a mechanical failure. What happened to the documents? She asked. Arthur kept the originals, then they died with him. No, he told me he created 3 copies. Where? He never said. Victoria walked to the window. The grounds remained dark beyond the glass, obscured by the reflection of the library. Why didn't you contact him again? Because I was arrested 2 days after our meeting. On what charge? Espionage. Mrs. Brooks set the coffee tray down without speaking. Marcus continued. The arrest was never made public. I was held at an unofficial detention facility for 11 weeks. They wanted access to the encryption key protecting Aegis's core source code. Who is they? Men who introduced themselves as government investigators. You didn't believe them? Some were government. Others worked for Vale. After a while, the distinction became irrelevant. Thomas's attention dropped toward the scars on Marcus's hands. "How did you get out?" he asked. "A transport vehicle crashed during a storm. Convenient. 4 people died. Nothing about it was convenient." "And you escaped?" "I survived." Marcus rolled up his left sleeve. A long scar crossed his forearm, with smaller marks circling the wrist. "For the next several months, I tried to contact journalists, attorneys, and people I knew in the military. Every person who agreed to meet me was threatened. One disappeared. Another was arrested on unrelated charges. Then a body was found in a burned vehicle, registered in my name. They declared it was you," Victoria said. "Dental records confirmed it." "How? They weren't my dental records." Thomas's skepticism remained, but it was no longer absolute. "Why live on the street?" Victoria asked. "A man with your skills could create another identity. For a while I did. I worked under different names: warehouses, construction sites, repair shops. Each time I stayed somewhere too long, someone found me. The people in the SUV? Possibly. You don't know? There are several groups who would benefit from finding me. That is not comforting. It wasn't intended to be." Victoria faced him again. "Why were you near my office tonight?" Marcus did not answer. The silence told her more than words could have. "You weren't there by accident. No. You were watching Hale Meridian Tower." "Why?" "Because Graham's acquisition proposal was delivered this morning." Victoria felt a chill. "The proposal is confidential, not to the people who designed it." "How did you know?" Marcus hesitated before reaching for his canvas bag. Thomas placed a hand near his weapon. Slowly, Marcus opened the bag and removed a battered laptop. One corner had been reinforced with tape. He set it on the table and connected a small battery pack. The machine started with a quiet hum. "You carried a computer while sleeping outside?" Victoria asked. "The bag is waterproof." That wasn't the question. The computer matters more than most places I could sleep. He entered a long password, then connected a second device resembling an ordinary flash drive. Lines of code appeared across the screen. "I've been monitoring fragments of Aegis traffic for 18 months, he said. Victoria leaned closer. "North Star's network? Not exactly. North Star uses a modified version of Aegis, but it doesn't possess the original core. Graham's engineers reconstructed parts of it from early development builds. Then why is the company worth hundreds of millions? Because even an incomplete version is more advanced than anything currently on the civilian market. And the original?" Marcus looked at her. "The complete source code would be worth billions. Where is it? Encrypted. Where?" He tapped the side of his head. Thomas let out a quiet, skeptical breath. "The entire code?" Victoria asked. "No. The master key. Could they force you to reveal it?" They tried. Victoria looked again at his wrists and wondered what other scars remained hidden beneath the borrowed clothes. Why monitor Hale Meridian? Because 2 months ago, North Star's system began sending encrypted requests toward one of your company's dormant servers. What dormant server? A Hale Defense archive created in 2017, her father's final year. Victoria opened the corporate network on her laptop. "Give me the server designation." Marcus recited a string of numbers and letters. She entered them. Access denied. She used her executive credentials. Access denied again. "That's impossible," she said. "My authorization is universal, not if someone created access above the executive layer. There is no level above mine. Then someone inside your company doesn't want you knowing it exists." Thomas moved toward the door. "I'll contact system security." "No," Marcus said. Thomas turned. "You're fond of that word. If the server is being monitored, an internal investigation will alert whoever controls it." "He's right," Victoria said. Thomas looked at her with disbelief. "We're accepting his technical assessment now? We confirmed part of his story. We confirmed that someone with his name founded a company. We have not confirmed the rest." Marcus rotated his laptop toward Victoria. A map of Chicago appeared. covered by small blue points representing buildings, transport stations, and electrical substations. Hale Meridian Tower glowed red at the center. "What is this?" she asked. "Traffic generated by the North Star demonstration system currently installed in 12 city-owned buildings. We haven't announced that pilot program, I know." The blue points pulsed. "North Star claims the pilot is measuring energy consumption," Marcus continued. "But these signals include cellular density, vehicle movement, and emergency response activity. They're collecting surveillance data. They're teaching the system to predict human behavior." Victoria examined the map. Several blue lines converged on Hale Meridian Tower. Another extended north toward her neighborhood. Then a red point appeared over the mansion. Her breath caught. "They know where I am. The SUV confirmed your location," Marcus said. "Why would Graham monitor me before I've approved the acquisition?" "To understand which members of your board you meet privately, which regulators visit your home, and who might influence your decision." "That would be criminal, only if someone proves it." Victoria looked at the screen again. "You followed their signal here?" "No. They followed yours. My phone, possibly your car, possibly the security badge you were wearing." She immediately removed the badge and placed it on the table. Marcus connected a small diagnostic reader. Seconds later, a code appeared. "There," he said. "A secondary transmitter hidden inside the access chip." Thomas picked up the badge with a cloth. "How long has it been active?" "Based on the battery level, less than 48 hours. Victoria thought about everyone who could have accessed her coat. Assistants, drivers, security staff, employees at the private club where she had attended a board dinner. Someone close enough to touch her belongings had planted a tracking device. "I want the entire mansion checked," she told Thomas. "No Hale Meridian security personnel. Use people you trust personally." Thomas nodded and left. Mrs. Brooks remained beside the door. "You should rest," she told Victoria. "I won't be sleeping. Rest and sleep are not the same thing." Victoria squeezed her hand. "Give us a few minutes." Mrs. Brooks looked at Marcus. Her expression was compassionate but firm. "If you brought danger into this home, tell her now. That woman has spent enough of her life paying for the secrets of men." Marcus lowered his eyes. "Yes, ma'am." When they were alone, Victoria closed the library doors. "Mrs. Brooks practically raised me," she explained. "Her warning was not symbolic. I understood it." "Good." She poured 2 cups of coffee. Marcus accepted his without sugar. For a moment, neither spoke. The first shock had passed, leaving Victoria with dozens of questions and no clear way to separate truth from manipulation. "Why didn't you approach me directly?" she asked. "What would I have said? That the homeless black man outside your billion-dollar tower secretly created the technology your board wants to purchase. You might have begun with evidence." "I tried approaching Arthur Hale's daughter 2 years ago." Victoria looked up. "When?" "October 2024. A technology summit at McCormick Place. I got within 30 feet of you before your security team removed me." "I don't remember that." "You weren't supposed to." "What happened?" "I told one of your guards I had information about Aegis. He detained me in a service corridor. 15 minutes later, 2 men arrived carrying federal credentials. The same people who arrested you? One of them was, how did you escape?" "I pulled a fire alarm." Despite everything, Victoria almost smiled. "That was you?" 3,000 people were evacuated. I said I escaped. I didn't say it was elegant. "Why try again now? Because the acquisition changes everything. If Hale Meridian purchases North Star, Graham gains access to your global infrastructure, government contracts, and nearly 400 million connected devices. He wouldn't control Hale Meridian. He doesn't need to. North Star's software would sit inside your network. Once installed, it could quietly rebuild the missing portions of Aegis using your computing resources. And recover the master key? No. Then he still needs you." Marcus nodded. Victoria understood. The acquisition brings the system closer to completion, she said. Finding you provides the final key. That's why the timing matters. Why were you living outside instead of warning me through an attorney or journalist? I sent information to 6 reporters. 2 ignored it. 1 article was canceled by the publisher. Another journalist lost her job. The last 2 forwarded my messages to Graham. How do you know? Because 48 hours later, I was attacked behind a shelter in Milwaukee. Victoria studied him carefully. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't. It was not the answer she expected. You should verify everything I've said, Marcus continued. Trust is what people request when evidence is inconvenient. Yet you expect me to risk my company based on your story. No. I expect you to protect it based on what your own systems will show. And after I verify it, reject the acquisition. That won't stop Graham. No, but it will keep him outside your network. Victoria sat opposite him. You could have exposed this technology years ago by releasing the source code. The military applications would have spread within days, then destroy it. The core system is already loose. Destroying my copy wouldn't erase Graham's. It would only remove the one tool capable of proving his version was stolen. So you kept the master key as evidence. And insurance. It hasn't protected you very well. It kept me alive. The honesty of that answer unsettled her. Outside, the wind shook snow from the trees. The storm had isolated the mansion from the rest of Chicago, creating the illusion that no world existed beyond its gates. Victoria looked at Marcus's face in the firelight. He had lived without a permanent home for years, hiding among people society preferred not to see. The disguise had worked because powerful men rarely looked directly at homeless people. A ragged coat made him invisible more effectively than any false passport. How long have you been homeless? She asked. On and off for 3 years. Where do you sleep? Shelters when they're safe. Churches, transit stations, abandoned buildings. You're an army veteran and an engineer whose work is worth billions. To the street, none of that matters. It matters to me because you need something. Victoria recoiled slightly. Marcus recognized the effect of his words. I didn't mean, yes, you did. She stood and carried her coffee toward the fire. You believe every wealthy person helps only because they expect repayment. Experience encourages the belief. Then perhaps your experience is incomplete. Perhaps. She turned toward him. I don't expect payment for bringing you here. You want answers. I wanted answers only after my security system failed. That's fair. But now that I understand some of what happened, I need your help. There's the debt. No. There's an offer. Marcus waited. Help me prove whether North Star is infiltrating Hale Meridian. In exchange, I'll provide a safe place to stay, legal representation, and access to medical care. You're proposing employment? I'm proposing cooperation. With a homeless man whose identity you can't verify, with the creator of Aegis. A long silence followed. What if I refuse? He asked. You can remain here until the storm passes. In the morning, I'll arrange safe accommodation. No conditions. The suspicion in his eyes weakened. He had expected the room, warmth, and food to become bargaining tools. Victoria realized how often kindness must have been used against him. Why? He asked. Why what? Why help me if I refuse to help you? She considered offering an elegant answer. Instead, she told him the truth, because there were nights when my mother needed someone to open a door for her, and nobody did. Marcus looked toward the fire. What happened to her? She left my father when I was 16. He controlled the accounts, the house, and most of the people she believed were friends. Within a month, she went from living in this mansion to sleeping in a motel room. She had no money, she had money. My father had power. Power lasts longer. Did you go with her? No. The single word carried 22 years of guilt. My father convinced me that she was unstable, Victoria continued. He said she had abandoned us. I believed him until she died. How? An overdose. Prescription medication and alcohol. I'm sorry. So am I. She returned to her chair. After her death, I found letters she had written to me. My father intercepted everyone. She asked me to meet her. She asked for another chance. She apologized for things that weren't her fault. Marcus did not offer a shallow reassurance. He simply listened. I can't open the door she needed, Victoria said. But tonight, I could open one for you. Something shifted between them. It was not trust. Not yet. It was recognition between two people whose lives had been shaped by powerful men controlling the truth. Marcus extended his hand across the table. I'll help you examine North Star. Victoria looked at his hand before taking it. 3 conditions, he added. Of course. Nothing connects to Hale Meridian's primary network until I approve it. We work only with people you trust personally, and Graham cannot know I'm alive. My condition is simpler. What is it? No more lies inside this house. Marcus's expression tightened. That may be harder than my 3. Then leave in the morning. He held her gaze. All right, he said. No more lies. Their handshake lasted a second longer than necessary. It was not romantic. It was not safe. It was the beginning of an alliance neither fully understood. At 2 in the morning, Marcus entered the mansion's private technology room. Arthur Hale had built the facility during the company's early expansion. Servers lined the walls behind glass partitions, while a central workstation provided access to isolated backups of Hale Meridian's oldest systems. Victoria watched Marcus transform. The exhaustion remained, but his movements became confident. He examined equipment without touching it, identified network connections by sight, and asked precise questions about upgrades performed during the previous 5 years. The homeless man from the pharmacy vanished again. In his place was a systems architect. You were telling the truth, Victoria said. About which part? You created Aegis. I thought you had already accepted that. I accepted that a man with your name founded Reed Applied Systems. Watching you here is different. Marcus inserted a clean diagnostic drive into the isolated terminal. Lines of data filled the screens. You built this room? He asked. My father designed it. He didn't trust cloud storage. He didn't trust anything he couldn't physically lock. Smart man, sometimes. Marcus began tracing the dormant server's authorization path. Each request encountered another layer of encryption. He did not appear frustrated. If anything, the resistance energized him. Victoria stood beside him for nearly an hour. You should sleep, he said. You're in my house attempting to access a server that officially doesn't exist. I'm not attempting anymore. A directory opened. Thousands of encrypted files appeared. Victoria leaned closer. What did you do? Your father used a modified Hale defense protocol. Old, but elegant. You broke his encryption? No. I recognized it. She looked at him sharply. How? Marcus did not answer immediately. Then he remembered her condition. No more lies, she reminded him. He exhaled. Because I helped him design it. You said you met my father once. I said he arranged a meeting. I never said it was our only conversation. Victoria's voice became dangerously quiet. How many times did you speak to him? Dozens. Over what period? 8 months. You knew him. Yes. Why conceal that? Because Arthur made me promise never to tell you. She stepped away from the workstation. My father knew you for 8 months and specifically mentioned me. He talked about you constantly. The answer disarmed her. What did he say? That you were smarter than he had been at your age. That you understood people better than he did. That he was proud of you but feared he had taught you to treat tenderness like a weakness. Victoria stared at Marcus. Those words sounded painfully like her father. Too proud to express love directly and too self-aware to change while he was alive. Why would he make you promise not to contact me? He believed Graham Vale had someone close to your family. Arthur thought keeping you ignorant would protect you. He was wrong. Marcus returned to the screen, A file near the bottom of the directory carried no date, only 2 initials. Victoria stopped breathing for a moment. "That's me." Marcus opened the file. A password prompt appeared. Below it was a security question. What did she give away on her 13th birthday? Victoria stared at the words. No corporate officer could have known the answer. Almost no one alive knew. "A red bicycle," she whispered. Marcus entered it. The file unlocked. A video appeared on the screen. Arthur Hale sat in the same library where Victoria had questioned Marcus earlier that night. He looked tired and older than he did in the portrait. The recording date was 3 weeks before his plane crashed. Victoria reached for the edge of the desk. Her father looked directly into the camera. "Victoria," he began, "if you are watching this, then Marcus Reed is alive, and I am probably not." The image froze. Every screen in the room went black. Marcus moved instantly, disconnecting the terminal from the local network. "What happened?" Victoria demanded. "Someone detected the file opening. Can you recover it?" "I don't know." A warning appeared on the central monitor. Remote purge initiated. A progress bar began moving across the screen. 10%, 22, 36. Marcus opened the workstation casing and pulled 2 cables free. The purge continued. "It's running from inside the backup array," he said. "Stop it! I'm trying." 59%. Victoria watched her father's hidden files disappear one directory at a time. Marcus typed rapidly, redirecting commands and isolating storage sectors. The system resisted every attempt, 81%. Then he froze. "What?" Victoria asked. "The purge isn't only deleting the files. What else is it doing? It's copying them." "To where?" Marcus traced the transfer address. The destination appeared. Vale Strategic Solutions. Archive node 7 at 94%. Marcus disconnected the physical storage unit. Sparks flashed beneath the console, filling the room with the smell of burned plastic. The screens went dark. Silence followed. "Did you save anything?" Victoria asked. Marcus removed the damaged storage unit. "Fragments. Maybe. My father's video? I don't know." Victoria looked at the dead monitor. For 4 years, she had believed Arthur Hale had taken his secrets to the grave. For less than 30 seconds, his voice had returned. Then Graham Vale had stolen him again. Thomas rushed into the room with his weapon drawn. "What happened?" "Someone breached the archive," Victoria said. "No one came through the network. We're completely isolated." Marcus looked toward the ceiling. Not completely. He crossed the room and examined a ventilation panel. Behind it, almost invisible against the metal, was a tiny wireless relay. Thomas removed it with gloved hands. "This was installed inside the mansion," he said. Victoria felt the betrayal before she understood it. Only staff, relatives, and trusted company executives had unrestricted access to the property. Marcus examined the relay. "It has a short-range receiver. Someone nearby activated it after we opened the file." "The SUV?" Thomas asked. "No. The vehicle left the area. How do you know? If it were close enough to trigger this, your external system would detect its signal." Thomas's face hardened. "Then whoever activated it is still on the property." The 3 of them stood in the dim technology room, listening to the old house settle around them. Above their heads were bedrooms, storage rooms, and private corridors. Somewhere beyond the locked door, Mrs. Brooks and the newly arrived guards were searching the mansion. Victoria thought of the words her father had recorded. "If you are watching this, then Marcus Reed is alive, and I am probably not." She looked at Marcus. "You said powerful men killed your identity, yes, and my father discovered who they were." "Yes." "Then his plane crash wasn't an accident." Marcus did not answer. He no longer needed to. Thomas's radio crackled. One of the guards spoke from the east corridor. "Sir, we found something." Thomas lifted the radio. "What?" "The window in the guest suite is open," Marcus's face changed. "That isn't possible," Victoria said. "The windows are alarmed. The alarm was disabled." Thomas asked, "Where's Mrs. Brooks?" No one answered. He repeated the question. Static filled the radio. Then came a faint sound from somewhere above them, the unmistakable crash of breaking glass. Thomas ran for the door. Victoria followed, but Marcus caught her arm. "Stay behind me. This is my house, and whoever is inside knows it better than I do." They entered the corridor. The lights failed. Darkness swallowed the mansion. Somewhere on the upper floor, a woman screamed. "Evelyn!" Victoria shouted. She moved toward the staircase, but a red laser appeared against her chest. Marcus saw it first. He slammed her to the floor as a suppressed gunshot cut through the darkness. Wood shattered behind them. Thomas returned fire. Marcus pulled Victoria behind a marble column, shielding her with his body. His borrowed sweater smelled faintly of soap and smoke. Beneath it, his heartbeat remained impossibly steady. Footsteps moved across the upper landing. A shadow disappeared toward the west wing. Thomas started after it. "No!" Marcus called. "It's pulling you away from her." Before Thomas could respond, another figure emerged behind Victoria. Marcus turned, seized the intruder's wrist, and redirected the handgun toward the ceiling. A shot shattered the chandelier. Glass rained across the floor. The attacker struck Marcus in the ribs. Marcus absorbed the blow, drove his shoulder forward, and pinned the man against the wall. His movements were controlled and efficient, nothing like a desperate street fight. The attacker dropped the weapon. Thomas kicked it away. Marcus tore off the man's mask. Victoria recognized him. "Daniel?" Her driver stared back at her. The man who had waited outside Hale Meridian Tower. The man who had driven her for 5 years. The man who knew her schedule, her homes, and the people she trusted. Daniel smiled through blood on his teeth. "You should have left him in the snow," he said. Then he bit down on something hidden inside his mouth. Marcus grabbed his jaw, but it was too late. Daniel convulsed and collapsed. Thomas checked his pulse. Poison. Victoria stood frozen beside the broken chandelier. Her loyal drivers had died at her feet rather than answer a single question. Mrs. Brooks appeared at the top of the staircase, supported by one of the guards. A cut marked her forehead, but she was alive. Victoria released a breath that felt trapped inside her lungs. Marcus retrieved Daniel's weapon. Engraved beneath the grip was the same shield and lines insignia carved into Marcus's old boot. Thomas saw it too. "You said that symbol belonged to your army unit." "It did." "Then why was your unit's weapon in Daniel's hand?" Marcus stared at the emblem. "Because the men who erased me didn't merely infiltrate Vale or Hale Meridian." He looked toward Arthur Hale's portrait. They built their organization inside the United States military. From Daniel's pocket came the sound of a phone ringing. Thomas removed it carefully and activated the speaker. A distorted voice filled the foyer. "Captain Reed," it said, "you've spent 3 years hiding among ghosts. Did you honestly believe Victoria Hale would save you?" Marcus looked at Victoria. The voice continued, "Leave the house before sunrise, and she may live long enough to learn why her father chose you over his own daughter." The call ended. Victoria stared at Marcus through the settling dust and broken glass. What did he mean? Marcus's silence was different this time. Not fear, shame. Her father had trusted this stranger with secrets he had withheld from her. He had designed encrypted systems with him, hidden evidence for him, and perhaps died because of him. "What did my father choose you for?" she demanded. Marcus slowly lowered the weapon. "To inherit the one thing he could never give you." "What thing?" Marcus looked at the dark screens of the technology room. Control of Hale Meridian. The gunshot had shattered more than the chandelier. By 4 in the morning, Daniel's body had been removed from the foyer. Mrs. Brooks's injury had been treated, and every employee inside the Hale mansion had been confined to a separate room. No one was permitted to make a phone call. Thomas had contacted Detective Samuel Carter, a former partner he trusted with his life. Carter arrived without lights or sirens, accompanied by one medical examiner and 2 officers from a special investigations unit. The official report would describe Daniel's death as a suspected suicide following an attempted robbery. It was a temporary lie, but for the moment, a necessary one. If the organization hunting Marcus had infiltrated the military, Victoria could no longer assume that the police, federal authorities, or her own corporate security division were safe. She could barely assume that the people inside her home were safe. Marcus sat alone in the library, while Victoria stood at the opposite end of the room. Between them lay her father's private journal, Daniel's tracking device, and the damaged storage unit containing what remained of Arthur Hale's secret archive. The first light of dawn pressed weakly against the windows. Victoria had changed out of her blood-stained clothes, but she could still feel Daniel's blood on her hands. "Control of Hale Meridian," she said. "Those were your exact words." Marcus nodded. "Explain them." "Your father created an emergency governance protocol before his death. He believed Graham Vale and several members of your board were preparing a hostile takeover. I became chief executive immediately after the crash. Publicly, yes, and privately? Privately, Arthur was no longer certain the company could survive under the existing structure." Victoria stared at him. "You expect me to believe my father gave a stranger control of the company he spent 40 years building? I wasn't a stranger to him. You were to me. That was the point. Do not answer me with riddles." Marcus rubbed a hand across his tired face. The organization behind Vale had access to Arthur's directors, attorneys, and senior executives. Anyone publicly associated with Hale Meridian could be compromised. Your father needed someone outside the company, someone they were already trying to destroy. And he selected you. He selected Aegis. The distinction did nothing to ease her anger. Marcus opened the damaged storage unit and placed a small metallic component on the desk. It resembled an ordinary memory chip, scorched along one edge. "Arthur designed Hale Meridian's voting system around a distributed authorization network," he explained. "Ordinary corporate decisions require approval from the board. Certain emergency actions, suspending directors, freezing acquisitions, isolating military contracts, can be executed through a dormant safeguard called Janus. I've studied every governance instrument connected to this company. There is no Janus protocol. Because the board didn't create it, then it has no legal authority. It does if Arthur transferred 37% of his controlling shares into a private trust before he died." Victoria's face became still. Her father's estate had been examined by teams of accountants and attorneys. His voting shares had supposedly passed to her, giving Victoria effective control of Hale Meridian. "You're lying. I wish I were. Those shares belong to me. Economically, yes. You received the dividends and asset appreciation. But the emergency voting authority was separated from the financial ownership. That would have appeared in probate. Not if the trust was established through a classified defense provision and sealed under national security law." Victoria walked to the desk and planted both hands on its surface. "Who holds the voting authority?" Marcus looked at her. "I do." The room seemed to contract around them. Victoria had survived hostile investors, government investigations, and executives who had underestimated her because she was Arthur Hale's daughter. She had defended the company through a recession and doubled its market value within 5 years, and now, a man she had found beneath a pharmacy shelter claimed that he could control the empire she had inherited. "Get out." Marcus did not move. "Victoria, get out of my house. You need to understand what Arthur intended. My father is dead. His intentions do not entitle you to my company. I have never exercised the authority, but you possess it, only if we recover Janus. That is supposed to comfort me? No. It is supposed to explain why Graham needs both of us." She turned away from him before anger made her careless. Graham Vale needed Hale Meridian's infrastructure. He needed Marcus's master key to complete Aegis, And if Marcus truly held emergency voting authority, Graham needed him to control the company itself. The acquisition had never been a simple business transaction. It was a doorway. "Why didn't my father tell me?" she asked. "He planned to." "When?" "After he identified the person inside your family," Victoria faced him again. "Inside my family, the leak wasn't merely an executive. Arthur believed someone with access to both Hale Meridian and this house was passing information to Vale." "Daniel?" "No. Daniel didn't begin working for you until after the crash. Then who?" "I don't know. You knew my father for 8 months. You shared classified systems and secret meetings. He gave you control of his company, yet you expect me to believe he never named the traitor." "He didn't trust electronic communication. We were supposed to meet in Toronto after his board retreat, the day his plane crashed." "Yes." Victoria looked toward Arthur's portrait. For 4 years, she had resented her father for dying before they could repair their relationship. Now she was discovering that he had spent his final months preparing for the possibility that someone would kill him, and he had trusted Marcus instead of her. "Tell me why he chose you," she said. "I already did." "No. It just explains why he needed your technology. It doesn't explain why he trusted you personally." Marcus lowered his gaze. The hesitation exposed another concealed truth. "No more lies inside this house," Victoria reminded him. "He owed me." "For what?" Marcus looked back at her. "Your father destroyed Reed Applied Systems." The answer seemed to stop time. Minutes earlier, Marcus had portrayed Arthur as an ally trying to expose Graham Vale. Now he claimed Arthur had participated in the theft. Victoria spoke carefully. "You said Graham stole your company. He did. And now you're saying my father destroyed it. Both statements are true. Explain." Marcus stood and walked toward the fire. In 2016, Reed Applied Systems was weeks away from signing a federal contract. We had debts, but the contract would have stabilized the company. Graham learned that my team had created a security barrier preventing external control of Aegis. He needed the barrier removed before the technology could be adapted for defense. And you refused. Yes. So Vale Strategic Solutions created evidence suggesting we had transferred classified architecture to a foreign investor. What did my father do? Hale Meridian's security division validated the evidence because he believed it was genuine. At first, Marcus stared into the flames. The validation destroyed us. Our accounts were frozen. Investors withdrew. Employees were interrogated. One of my partners took his own life. My mother lost access to the medical insurance the company provided. Victoria understood before he finished. She died. 4 months later. I'm sorry. Marcus's jaw tightened. Arthur said the same thing. The bitterness was quiet, which made it more powerful. When did he learn the evidence was false? Victoria asked. After my arrest. One of his analysts discovered that the data signature had been copied from a Hale Meridian simulation. Arthur confronted Malcolm Vale privately. Malcolm threatened you. How? He showed Arthur photographs of you entering your apartment, leaving restaurants, meeting friends. He had access to your medical files and travel schedules. Victoria felt exposed even though the photographs were a decade old. My father surrendered. He delayed. There's the difference, not to your employees, not to your mother. No, Marcus had every reason to hate Arthur Hale. Yet when he spoke of him, hatred competed with reluctant respect. Why work with him after that? Because he came to me without attorneys or bodyguards. He admitted exactly what he had done. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He offered evidence. Evidence against Vale and against himself. That sounded like Arthur. When he finally accepted responsibility, he did it with brutal completeness. He was willing to go to prison, Victoria asked. He said prison was less frightening than leaving you an empire built on a lie. Victoria looked away. All life, she had believed Hale Meridian was the result of her father's brilliance and relentless discipline. Now part of its success appeared connected to a stolen technology and the destruction of a black veterans company. Even if Arthur had acted unknowingly at first, he had concealed the truth afterward. "What happened to your team?" she asked. "Two accepted settlements and signed permanent non-disclosure agreements. One disappeared. 3 joined Vale. The others changed industries." "Your mother?" "Her name was Lillian Reed. She taught mathematics at a public high school in Detroit for 29 years. When Reed Applied Systems collapsed, I could no longer pay for the experimental treatment she needed. You blame my father. I blamed everyone. Including me?" Marcus turned from the fire. "For years, yes. The admission wounded her despite its honesty. Then why try to warn me? Because blame and truth are not the same thing. You didn't destroy my company, but I inherited the company that did. You also spent 5 years turning Hale Meridian away from weapons development and toward civilian infrastructure. You created the housing initiative on the South Side. You capped executive bonuses during the layoffs. You researched me. I needed to know whether you were your father's daughter. And what did you decide? That depends on which parts of Arthur Hale you inherited." Before Victoria could respond, the library door opened. Thomas entered carrying a sealed evidence bag. Inside was a small black key found in Daniel's pocket. "Detective Carter found this beneath the lining of his coat," he said. "It isn't for a house or vehicle." Marcus examined it through the plastic, safe deposit key. "There's a serial number," Thomas said. "Carter can trace the bank, but it may take time." Victoria studied the number. She had seen its pattern before: Hale Federal Trust. Thomas looked at her. "Your family's bank? It was founded by my grandfather. Hale Meridian sold its interest 20 years ago, but our private accounts remain there." She entered the serial number into a secure banking application. The system identified a branch in downtown Chicago. The account holder's name was hidden. However, the authorized access list contained 2 initials: A.H. Arthur Hale. Victoria checked the opening date, November 2017, the month her father first met Marcus. "Daniel had access to one of my father's safe deposit boxes. Or he stole the key from the person who did," Thomas said. "When does the bank open, Chin?" Victoria looked at Marcus. "We'll be there at 8:55. Thomas shook his head. "After tonight, you're not leaving the property. Someone inside this house helped Daniel. Staying here may be more dangerous. Then Carter can retrieve the box. No. If my father's name is attached, the bank will notify the family trustee. I need to arrive before anyone has time to interfere." Marcus placed the key on the desk. "They'll expect you to trace it. Then they'll expect me to be afraid. They almost killed you 3 hours ago and failed. You're treating survival like proof of invulnerability." Victoria stepped closer. "You spent 3 years hiding because you believed no one could be trusted. What did it accomplish? It kept me alive. It also kept Graham in power." Marcus's eyes hardened. "You don't get to judge what survival required." "No, but I get to decide what I do with mine." Thomas watched them, recognizing that neither would yield. Finally, he said, "We use an unmarked vehicle. Carter drives. Marcus stays here." "No," Victoria replied. "If the box contains encrypted material, we need him. And if he's leading us into a trap, then keeping him beside us is better than leaving him alone in my house." Marcus gave her a dry look. "Your trust is touching. It isn't trust. It's risk management." For the first time that morning, something resembling amusement passed across his face. At 9:12, Victoria entered Hale Federal Trust through an underground parking structure. She wore a dark coat, plain glasses, and a scarf covering part of her face. Marcus walked several steps behind her in one of Thomas's suits. The clothes fit imperfectly, but he no longer looked like the freezing stranger she had found the previous night. Detective Carter accompanied them as private security. The bank manager, Charles Pembroke, greeted Victoria in a secure elevator. He was a pale, nervous man who had handled the Hale family accounts for more than a decade. "Ms. Hale, if we had known you were coming, That is precisely why you weren't told. Of course, Victoria presented the key. Pembroke examined the number, and his professional smile disappeared. Is there a problem? This box has special access restrictions. I'm listed as my father's estate representative. Yes, but Box 714 was established outside the estate. By whom? Pembroke looked at Marcus, then Carter. I'm afraid I can only discuss that with you privately. They stay. Miss Hale, they stay. Or I move every Hale account before lunch. Pembroke swallowed. The registered owner was Eleanor Hale. Victoria felt the name like a hand closing around her throat. My mother? Yes, Eleanor had died in 2011, 6 years before the box was opened. That's impossible. The account was activated using a trust she created before her death. Who manages it? Pembroke turned his monitor toward her. The trustee was Naomi Price, Victoria's aunt, her mother's younger sister. Naomi had sat beside Victoria at Arthur's funeral. She had comforted her through the reading of the will and encouraged her to accept the position of CEO. She was one of only 3 relatives with unrestricted access to the mansion. She also served on Hale Meridian's board. The person inside my family, Victoria whispered. Marcus did not respond, but he understood. Has Naomi accessed the box? Victoria asked. Pembroke checked the record. 7 times. When was the most recent? Yesterday afternoon, the day North Star's acquisition proposal arrived. Did she remove anything? We don't record the box's contents, but security cameras record the vault. Those recordings are retained for 90 days. Preserve them. Pembroke nodded. Who else is authorized? Victoria asked. There are 2 secondary beneficiaries. He opened another record. The first was Arthur Hale. The second name had been redacted by court order. What court? The authorization is classified. Marcus leaned toward the monitor. Show me the order number. Pembroke hesitated. Victoria said, Do it. Marcus read the number and went still. You recognize it, she said. It's connected to my detention. The bank manager looked between them. I'm afraid I don't understand. You don't need to, Carter said. They were escorted into the private vault. Rows of stainless steel doors lined the walls beneath silent cameras. Box 714 required 2 keys. Pembroke inserted the bank's key, and Victoria used the one taken from Daniel. The lock opened. Inside was a single white envelope. No files, no drive, no photographs. Just an envelope bearing Victoria's name in her mother's handwriting. Her hands began to tremble. She had read Eleanor's letters so many times that she knew every angle and curve. There was no possibility of a mistake. Victoria carried the envelope to a private viewing room. Marcus and Carter remained near the door while Pembroke waited outside. The paper was yellowed around the edges, proving the envelope itself was older than the box. She opened it carefully. Inside was a letter and a photograph. The image showed Eleanor Hale standing beside a younger black woman outside a university engineering building. Both were smiling. Between them stood a little black boy, perhaps 6 years old, holding a model airplane. Victoria turned the photograph over. Eleanor, Lillian, and Marcus, Detroit, 1990. She looked at Marcus. His face had lost all color. That's your mother. Yes. You knew my mother? Marcus took the photograph with unsteady fingers. I didn't remember this. You're the child. He nodded. Victoria unfolded the letter. My darling Victoria, if this letter has reached you, then the men who frightened your father have finally come for what they believe belongs to them. Before I met Arthur, I worked with Lillian Reed at Wayne State's summer mathematics program. She was the finest teacher I ever knew, and the first person who believed I could build a life larger than the one my family had chosen for me. Her son Marcus was only a child, but even then he could look at a broken machine and understand what it wished to become. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. Victoria continued. Years later, Arthur's company received a defense contract based partly on research Lillian and I conducted together. Arthur never knew the origin of the early work. I did not tell him because I was ashamed that I had used Lillian's ideas after we lost contact. That silence became the foundation of a fortune. Victoria stopped reading. Hail Meridian had not merely helped destroy Marcus's company. Its earliest success might have been built on research taken from his mother. She forced herself to continue. When Marcus founded Reed Applied Systems, I recognized Lillian's mathematics inside UGIS. He had completed what we began. I tried to persuade Arthur to support him, but Malcolm Vale had already made his offer. If Marcus ever comes to you, listen before you judge him. Our family owes his family more than money can repay. There is another truth you must know. Naomi has been working with Malcolm Vale since before you were born. She believes the Hale fortune should have belonged to her because she introduced Arthur and me. She resented every share placed in your name. Do not confront her without proof. The proof is hidden where Arthur first promised to build a better world. Love does not excuse what I did, but I hope it explains why I tried to repair it. Your mother, Victoria read the final lines twice. What does that location mean? Carter asked. Where Arthur first promised to build a better world, she repeated. Marcus looked at the photograph. Detroit. Why Detroit? My mother's classroom. Victoria remembered something from Arthur's biography. Before founding Hail Meridian, he had donated computer equipment to an underfunded mathematics program in Detroit. The publicity photograph from that donation had helped him secure his first major investor. That must have been where he met Eleanor. Marcus turned the photograph over again. A row of numbers had been written beneath the names. 217-0931. Coordinates? Carter asked. No, Marcus said. Classroom storage numbers. Building 42, floor 17, cabinet 9, drawer 31. You remember that after 36 years? My mother used the same labeling system everywhere. Victoria folded the letter. Naomi accessed this box yesterday. Why leave the envelope? Perhaps she didn't know it was here, Carter suggested. Marcus examined the interior. Or she added it. Victoria's relief vanished. You think the letter is false? The paper and handwriting may be genuine. That doesn't mean your mother placed it in this box. Why would Naomi lead us to Detroit? Because she wants us somewhere outside Chicago. Carter inspected the envelope. We can test it for prints and determine how long it's been here. No, Victoria said. Not yet. Marcus looked at her. You want to follow the clue. I want the truth. That may be exactly what they expect. Before Victoria could answer, the lights flickered. Marcus moved toward the door. A fire alarm sounded throughout the bank. Carter drew his weapon. The vault door began to close automatically. Pembroke! Victoria shouted. No response came from the corridor. Marcus wedged a chair beneath the door before the locking mechanism engaged. Smoke drifted from a ventilation duct. Not fire, Carter said after smelling it. Chemical agent. Marcus pulled Victoria's scarf across her mouth. Stay low. They left the room and found Pembroke unconscious beside the elevator. Carter checked his pulse. Alive, the elevator display showed every car frozen on another floor. Marcus pointed toward an emergency stairwell. A figure in a maintenance uniform appeared behind its narrow window. The same red shield and lines emblem was visible on his collar. Back! Marcus shouted. Gunfire shattered the glass. Carter returned fire while Marcus dragged Pembroke behind a stone column. Victoria crawled toward the alarm panel and struck the emergency suppression switch. Steel shutters descended between sections of the vault. The gunman rushed through before the nearest barrier closed. Marcus intercepted him. They collided against the deposit boxes. The attacker produced a knife, slashing Marcus across the shoulder. Marcus trapped the man's arm, struck his throat, and drove him to the floor. The gunman kicked Marcus backward and reached for Victoria. She grabbed Pembroke's metal document case and swung it with both hands. The edge struck the attacker's face. He staggered. Carter fired once. The man collapsed. For several seconds, the alarm was the only sound. Marcus pressed a hand against his bleeding shoulder. Victoria knelt beside the attacker. He was younger than Daniel and wore no identification. A communication device rested inside his ear. Marcus removed it. A woman's voice was speaking. "Confirm recovery of the letter." Victoria recognized the voice immediately. She had heard it at family dinners, board meetings, and her father's funeral. "Aunt Naomi," Victoria took the earpiece. "Naomi." Silence followed. Then her aunt sighed. "You always were too stubborn to stay protected. You ordered men to kill me. If I wanted you dead, darling, you would never have left the mansion. Where are you, correcting your father's final mistake?" "What mistake?" Believing Marcus Reed was more valuable than his own family. Marcus moved closer. "What's in Detroit?" Victoria asked. Naomi laughed softly. "History." The connection ended. Police sirens approached the bank. Carter looked at the fallen gunman. "We need to leave before local officers arrive. I don't know who controls the response." Marcus handed Victoria the photograph. "Naomi wanted us to find the letter." "Then Detroit is a trap." "Yes, but whatever she wants is there, probably." Victoria looked at the image of their mothers standing together before wealth, betrayal, and stolen technology divided their families. The billionaire woman and the homeless black man had not met by chance beneath a pharmacy shelter. Their lives had intersected decades before either understood the consequences. "We're going to Detroit," she said. Marcus pressed harder against his wound. "You heard me say it's a trap." "I did, and you still want to walk into it?" "No." Victoria folded her mother's letter and slipped it inside her coat. "I want Naomi to believe we did." They returned to the mansion through a service entrance shortly before noon. Thomas immediately called a private physician to treat Marcus's shoulder. The blade had cut deeply, but missed the artery. Marcus refused pain medication until the doctor threatened to staple the wound without it. Victoria spent the next hour building a false travel plan. Hale Meridian's corporate aircraft filed a flight request from Chicago to Detroit. 2 security vehicles departed the mansion in full view of the gates. An assistant booked an entire floor at the Detroit Foundation Hotel. Meanwhile, Victoria, Marcus, and Thomas remained inside the sealed technology room. Carter stayed at the bank to manage the investigation and preserve the appearance that Victoria had left the city. "If Naomi controls anyone monitoring your travel, she'll believe we're airborne within 20 minutes, Thomas said. Marcus sat beside the damaged storage unit, his left arm secured in a sling. "Then we have 20 minutes to discover what she expects us to find." Victoria placed the photograph beneath a high-resolution scanner. Marcus enlarged the background. Behind Eleanor and Lillian was a glass display cabinet. A student engineering project sat inside. A miniature electrical grid constructed from wooden buildings and copper wire. A handwritten card read, "The city that never goes dark, Arthur's promise," Victoria said. Marcus zoomed farther. One of the model buildings carried the number 42. Another was marked 17. The numbers were not storage coordinates. They identified components of the model. 42, 17, 9, 31, Marcus said. 4 buildings. In what order? The order of power distribution. He traced the copper wires through the image. The 4 numbered structures formed a pattern resembling a key. Victoria remembered the security prompt in her father's archive. The numbers are an encryption sequence. Marcus entered them into the recovered fragment of Arthur's storage drive. A hidden partition opened. One file remained intact. Not the video, a legal document. Janus Emergency Trust, Succession Protocol. Victoria opened it. The first pages confirmed much of Marcus's story. Arthur had separated emergency voting authority from the financial ownership of his Hale Meridian shares. Marcus Reed was named primary guardian, but beneath his name was a second designation. Successor upon death or incapacity. Victoria Eleanor Hal. Victoria looked at Marcus. You never controlled the company permanently, no. My authority existed only until you learned the truth and voluntarily accepted Janus. You knew that. I knew Arthur wanted you as successor. I had never seen the final document. Why tell me you controlled Hale Meridian? Because until the protocol transferred, I did. She continued reading. Janus could not be activated by one guardian alone. It required 2 biological encryption signatures, one connected to Eleanor Hale's research and another connected to Lillian Reed's. Their mothers had designed the original authorization structure. The company had been built from both families' work. Its emergency control could only be activated by both heirs, Victoria and Marcus. It was never about your father choosing me over you, Marcus said. He chose us together. Before Victoria could process the revelation, a new message appeared on Marcus's laptop. The dormant Hale server had reactivated. A live video feed filled the screen. Naomi stood inside an abandoned classroom in Detroit. Behind her was the original model city from the photograph. Beside her, tied to a chair, was an elderly black man. Marcus rose so quickly that pain crossed his face. No, Victoria looked at him. Who is that? Marcus approached the screen as though he had seen a ghost. The man's hair was white, his face bruised, but he was alive. My partner, Marcus whispered. Dr. Isaiah Cole, the one who disappeared. I thought they killed him. Naomi leaned towards the camera. I know you're still in Chicago, she said. Your little flight was clever, Victoria, but Daniel taught me how you lie. She placed a handgun against Isaiah's temple. Bring Marcus and the Janus key to Detroit before midnight. Marcus's hands curled into fists. Naomi smiled. And come without your security team. Otherwise, the last man capable of proving who created Aegis will die a second time. The feed ended. Victoria checked the clock. They had 11 hours. Marcus began packing the damaged drive. It's what she wants, Victoria said. I know. She needs both of us and the Janus sequence. I know. Then we don't give her the advantage by reacting emotionally. Marcus turned on her. Isaiah saved my life. He protected the source code after my arrest. His wife and children believe he abandoned them because I was too afraid to search for him. You couldn't have known. I should have. Victoria recognized the guilt. It was the same guilt she carried over her mother's letters. Then we bring him home, she said. How? Victoria looked at the Janus document, the tracking badge and the surviving fragment of Arthur's archive. Naomi believes she understands my father's final plan. She probably does, but she doesn't understand my mother's. Marcus followed her gaze toward the photograph. Eleanor and Lillian were smiling beside a model called The City That Never Goes Dark. 2 women whose research had created the foundation of Aegis. 2 women whom history had reduced to a billionaire's troubled wife and an engineer's dying mother. Victoria enlarged the model again. This time she noticed a 5th building hidden behind Lillian's shoulder. It contained no number, only a small red switch, a physical override. Your mother taught you to understand what broken machines wish to become, Victoria said. Marcus studied the image. What did mine teach you? That every system needs a way to escape the person controlling it. He finally saw the switch. The model in Detroit was not merely evidence, it was the original Aegis prototype. And somewhere inside it was a weapon that could destroy everything Graham Vale had stolen. Marcus looked at Victoria. If we activate that override, we could erase every version of Aegis connected to the network, including yours. Yes. Then Graham loses the technology, and Hale Meridian loses North Star. That acquisition was never mine to keep. You could lose billions. Victoria picked up her mother's letter. Our family's already lost more. For the first time since she had taken him home, Marcus looked at her without suspicion. Not as Arthur Hale's daughter, not as a billionaire woman offering charity to a homeless black man as a partner. "We go to Detroit," he said. Victoria nodded. "But we don't go there to surrender the key." She looked at the frozen image of Naomi holding a gun against Isaiah Cole's head. "We go there to bury Aegis and expose every person who tried to erase you." At 2:15 that afternoon, Victoria Hale disappeared. Her private jet departed Chicago for Detroit, carrying 2 assistants, 3 security officers, and a woman whose height and dark hair resembled hers from a distance. The passengers entered through a private hangar in full view of the airport's surveillance cameras. Every phone associated with Victoria's executive team traveled aboard the aircraft. Victoria did not. She left the mansion hidden beneath a blanket in the rear compartment of Mrs. Brooks's old delivery van. Thomas drove. Marcus lay beside her, protecting his injured shoulder while the vehicle passed through the service gate and joined the afternoon traffic. No one watching the estate would expect one of America's richest women to escape inside a 12-year-old van carrying empty flower boxes. The irony was not lost on Marcus. "Comfortable?" he asked. "My left foot is trapped beneath a watering can. I slept in a bus terminal last week, so this is an improvement for both of us." A brief smile crossed his face. It vanished when Thomas turned onto the interstate. Detroit lay almost 5 hours away. They could have arrived sooner by air, but every airport created records, cameras, and controlled points of entry. Driving allowed them to change vehicles twice and approach the city without using Victoria's identification. Detective Carter followed at a distance in an unmarked sedan. He had brought 2 people he trusted: retired federal investigator Helen Ward and cybersecurity specialist Leo Park. 6 people against an organization hidden inside corporations, government agencies, and the military. It was not an army. It was all they had. During the first hour, Marcus studied the recovered Janus document on an isolated tablet. Victoria watched lines of code reflect against his face. "What are you looking for?" "A way to activate the protocol without connecting to Hale Meridian." "Is that possible?" "Your mother designed the biological authorization layer. Mine designed the adaptive mathematics. The model in Detroit may contain the original interface. You keep calling it a model. That's what I remember. You were 6 years old. I remember every wire." He enlarged the photograph again. "My mother brought me to that classroom on Saturdays. She and Eleanor would spend hours arguing over distribution patterns. They gave me spare components to keep me occupied." "Did you know who my mother was?" "Only Eleanor. She wore old jeans, drank terrible vending machine coffee, and cursed at circuit boards." Victoria smiled despite herself. "That sounds more like the woman in her letters than the mother I remember." "What do you remember?" "Dinner parties, charity galas, arguments behind closed doors. Arthur changed her. Wealth changed both of them." Marcus looked through the tinted window at the highway. "Wealth doesn't always change people," he said. "Sometimes it gives their worst instincts better tools, and poverty, it gives people fewer places to hide them." The answer carried years of observation. Victoria had spent much of her life surrounded by people who disguised cruelty as strategy. Marcus had lived among people whose failures were exposed because they could not afford privacy. "Why didn't you sell Aegis when Graham offered you the money?" she asked. "I believed it could improve cities." "That sounds like a polished answer. It's still true. Not the entire truth." Marcus shut down the tablet. "My mother's electricity was disconnected when I was 11. Not because she couldn't pay, but because the utility company applied someone else's debt to our address. It took 6 weeks to correct. In winter, January." Victoria understood. Aegis was supposed to prevent resource failures. It was supposed to recognize when systems punished people for errors they didn't create. Power outages, medical supply shortages, emergency response delays. Cities collect enough information to solve many of those problems, but their systems don't communicate. "So you made them communicate," I tried. And Graham saw a surveillance network. Graham sees ownership. If something can be measured, he believes it can be controlled. Victoria considered Hale Meridian's involvement. Her company manufactured sensors, communication hardware, and urban data platforms. She had told herself these products improved efficiency. She had rarely asked what might happen if a single system connected all of them. Did my father understand what Aegis could become, eventually? Is that why he created Janus? Partly. Arthur believed the same adaptive architecture could protect Hale Meridian from infiltration. Janus watches the company as Aegis watches a city. It searches for concealed influence, bribes, shell companies, and coordinated votes. Yes, then why didn't it expose Naomi? It probably did. But Janus was never fully activated, because it required both families. Marcus nodded. Their mothers had created a system neither family could control alone. It was not simply an engineering decision. It was a safeguard against the ambition that later destroyed their partnership. Victoria's phone was traveling toward Detroit aboard her aircraft, but Thomas had provided her with an unregistered device. It vibrated inside her coat. Only 4 people knew the number. Elena Marquez's name appeared on the screen. Victoria answered. "Tell me you're safe. I'm in the executive crisis room with 6 board members," Elena said. "Graham arrived 20 minutes ago at Hale Meridian. He says the attack on your home proves the North Star acquisition has become a national security concern." How does he know about the attack? He claims a federal contact informed him. Daniel's body had been removed under a false report. No official record connected it to Victoria. Could only know because his people had sent Daniel. "What does he want?" Victoria asked. "An emergency board vote tonight. He's proposing immediate conditional approval of the acquisition. He can't call a Hale Meridian vote. Naomi can." Victoria closed her eyes. Is she there by video? She says she's recovering from surgery in Boston. Naomi was actually holding Isaiah Cole inside an abandoned Detroit classroom. "Listen carefully," Victoria said. "Do not challenge Graham or Naomi. Let them believe I'm traveling and unreachable. The board expects you to join remotely. Tell them the aircraft has communication problems. Victoria, if you miss the vote, Naomi may have enough support to approve the deal. Delay it until midnight." How? Request a revised antitrust opinion. Cite Article 19 of the acquisition rules. That may buy 2 hours. I need 5. Elena lowered her voice. "What is happening? Something my father should have told us years ago. Is Marcus Reed with you?" Victoria glanced at him. "How do you know that name?" Silence. "Elena, found it in an old personnel archive after you asked about North Star. Arthur authorized temporary access for a Marcus Reed in 2017. Why didn't you tell me? The file disappeared before I could verify it. Who knew you found it?" "No one." Victoria wanted to believe her. Elena had worked beside her for 8 years. She knew every appointment, acquisition, and private weakness. If Elena had betrayed her, there was almost nothing Graham would not know. "What did the file say?" Victoria asked. "Only that Reed was designated an external systems auditor. Anything else? A handwritten note from your father." "What note?" "If I fail, tell Victoria the man without a home is the only one who can return hers." Victoria looked at Marcus. Arthur had predicted everything. Marcus's fall, Victoria's threatened control of Hale Meridian, perhaps even the night she would take him into her home. "Delay the vote," Victoria said. "And Elena? Yes, trust no one in that room. I stopped doing that 20 minutes ago." The call ended. Marcus had heard enough to understand. "Graham is accelerating. He knows Naomi's operation at the bank failed. He may not know we recovered Janus. Then we keep it that way." Thomas watched them in the mirror. "We're changing vehicles in 15 minutes. Carter says the road ahead is clear." Marcus reopened the tablet. A notification appeared immediately. His expression changed. "What?" Victoria asked. "Someone accessed my diagnostic program. From Hale Meridian. No, from Detroit." The tablet displayed a short message. "Marcus, if you are reading this, trust the woman who opened the door." "I see Isaiah?" Victoria asked. Marcus checked the transmission path. It came through a fragment of Aegis. He must have accessed Naomi's equipment. Can you reply, not without exposing our location? Another line appeared. The classroom is empty. She moved the heart below the city. The heart, Victoria said. The model, or Aegis's central processor. A final message followed. Michigan Central, old power sublevel. Do not let her join the red circuit. The connection vanished. Thomas frowned. Michigan Central Station, it was abandoned for decades before its restoration, Marcus said. The tunnels and utility systems beneath the surrounding district are extensive. Naomi staged the classroom video, Victoria realized. She wanted us searching the university while she took the prototype elsewhere. Why Michigan Central? Marcus studied the numbers in the photograph. Because the original Aegis field test took place there. You tested a city control system inside an abandoned train station. Not the entire system. We used the old electrical network to simulate an urban grid without affecting occupied buildings. And the red circuit? Marcus's expression darkened. A restricted layer we built during the military evaluation. It allowed Aegis to bypass local controls during a national emergency. In plain English, it can seize connected infrastructure without permission. If Naomi connected the original model to the red circuit, she could use Janus to enter Hale Meridian and Aegis to control every compatible system. Emergency communications, power distribution, transportation networks, financial servers. She doesn't only want my company, Victoria said. She wants the network beneath it. They entered Detroit shortly after 7 in the evening. Snow covered the empty lots and brick buildings along the city's western edge. The skyline rose in the distance, lit by the final blue glow of dusk. For Marcus, the city was not merely a location, it was a collection of ghosts. He recognized streets where his mother had taken him to school, the diner where Reed Applied Systems held its first meetings, and the hospital where Lillian had died while he sat in federal custody. Victoria saw the change in him as they passed each landmark. His shoulders became rigid. His answers shortened. "Are you all right?" she asked. "No." The honesty surprised her. "Do you want to stop?" "No, that wasn't a test." "I know." They changed vehicles inside an underground garage owned by one of Carter's former colleagues. Mrs. Brooks's van remained behind. The team continued in 2 utility trucks carrying forged municipal maintenance credentials. Helen Ward briefed them through encrypted radios. Michigan Central's public areas are active, but the southern power sublevel remains closed for renovation. Thermal imaging shows at least 9 people below ground. "Entrances?" Thomas asked. 3. Main service ramp, ventilation corridor, and an old rail tunnel connecting to a utility building. "Naomi expects the ramp and corridor," Marcus said. "We use the tunnel." Carter studied the station plans. The tunnel partially collapsed 10 years ago. There's another entrance beneath a warehouse on Verner Highway. "How do you know? I used to sleep there." No one responded. The hidden billionaire, the female CEO, and the former police officers were relying on knowledge Marcus had gained while homeless. The years Graham intended as punishment had given Marcus access to parts of cities powerful people never saw. They parked behind the abandoned warehouse. Before leaving the vehicle, Victoria removed her coat and secured a protective vest around her torso. Thomas handed her a compact radio. "You stay between Carter and me," he said. "I can protect myself. You struck one man with a document case. That doesn't make you tactical." It was an effective document case. Marcus checked her vest straps with his uninjured hand. "Thomas is right. Enjoy the moment. It may be the only time I allow both of you to tell me what to do." His fingers paused near her shoulder. They were closer than either had expected. For several seconds, the urgency around them faded. Victoria saw the exhaustion beneath Marcus's control and the pain he refused to acknowledge. "Can still stay here," he said. "So can you. Isaiah is my responsibility. Naomi is mine." "No, Naomi's choices belong to her." The words challenged the guilt Victoria carried for her family. She looked into his eyes. Then Graham's choices don't belong to you either. Marcus gave a slight nod. For the first time, they both seemed willing to believe it. Thomas cleared his throat. If the emotional breakthrough is complete, we have a hostage to recover. Victoria stepped away. They entered the warehouse. Beneath a rusted floor panel, Marcus found a ladder descending into darkness. The team moved through the tunnel in single file, guided only by red lights mounted on their equipment. Water covered the floor. Old electrical cables hung from the walls like exposed roots. After 200 yards, Marcus raised his hand. Voices echoed ahead. Carter used a fiber-optic camera to inspect the next chamber. 2 armed guards stood beside a steel door. Helen disabled the corridor lights from a maintenance panel. When the guards moved to investigate, Carter and Thomas subdued them without firing. Marcus took one guard's access card. The steel door opened into a vast underground substation. Transformers and obsolete control panels filled the chamber. New equipment had been installed among them: server towers, fiber connections, and portable cooling systems. At the center stood the model city from the photograph. It was larger than Victoria had imagined, nearly 12 feet wide. Wooden buildings covered a metal table, joined by thousands of copper wires, the city that never goes dark. Isaiah Cole sat beside it, his wrists bound to a chair. Naomi stood behind him. Graham Vale was with her. He wore a black overcoat over an immaculate suit, as if he had arrived for a business negotiation rather than an execution. 4 armed men surrounded them. "Victoria," Graham said, "I was beginning to think you'd miss our meeting." Thomas and Carter raised their weapons. Graham's guards aimed back. Marcus stepped beside Victoria. For the first time in years, he faced the man who had stolen his work, destroyed his company, and buried his name. Graham studied him with open fascination. "Marcus Reed," he said, "the dead look remarkably healthy these days. You look exactly as I remember. Successful? Afraid." Graham smiled. Still mistaking arrogance for courage, Isaiah lifted his bruised face. "Marcus." Emotion broke through Marcus's discipline. "Isaiah, I'm sorry. You came. That's enough." "No," Graham said. "It isn't." He held up a small transmitter. A red light blinked above the model city. "The red circuit is connected to Hale Meridian's dormant archive. In less than 4 hours, your board will approve North Star. The instant it does, this system will enter Victoria's network as authorized software." Victoria looked at Naomi. "You betrayed my mother." Naomi wore a cream suit and pearl earrings. She looked exactly as she had at countless family dinners, composed, elegant, and faintly disappointed by everyone around her. "Eleanor betrayed me first," she said. "She trusted you. She used me. I introduced her to Arthur. I brought him to Detroit. Then she took the man, the company, and the life that should have been mine. You helped Graham's father steal Aegis because you were jealous. I helped build Hale Meridian. You sat on its board. I watched Arthur give you everything while treating me like a grateful relative. So you killed him." For the first time, Naomi's composure slipped. "I gave him a choice. He chose Marcus." Marcus stepped forward. "Arthur chose to expose you. He chose a stranger's reputation over his family. He chose the truth." Naomi laughed. "Truth is a luxury claimed by people who have already secured their wealth." Victoria saw herself reflected in her aunt's anger. The same discipline, the same refusal to appear weak. This was what she might have become if every injury had hardened into entitlement. "What do you want?" Victoria asked. "Activate Janus. You need 2 signatures. Exactly." Naomi turned a monitor toward them. The Hale Meridian board meeting appeared on screen. Elena sat near the head of the table while directors reviewed the North Star documents. A clock in the corner counted down to the vote. 3 hours and 41 minutes. "Once Janus is active, you will transfer emergency control to me," Naomi said. "Marcus will unlock the original Aegis core. Graham receives his network, I receive Hail Meridian, and you both leave alive. You know Janice cannot be transferred permanently, Victoria said. Naomi's eyes narrowed slightly. She did not know. Marcus recognized it too. That isn't what Arthur's document says, Naomi replied. You never found the final document. You only found my mother's letter. Graham turned toward her. A fracture appeared in their alliance. What document? He demanded. Naomi ignored him. Victoria continued. You spent years trying to recover a protocol you didn't understand. Janice doesn't give control to the person holding the key. It investigates concealed influence inside Hail Meridian. Graham looked at the model city. If she activates it, he said, the system will trace every North Star connection and every payment you made to board members. Marcus added. One of the armed men glanced uneasily toward Graham. Naomi raised her weapon and pressed it against Isaiah's head. Enough. Marcus's body tightened. Put your hand on the authorization plate, she ordered him. A glass panel rested beside the model. Two palm-shaped scanners glowed beneath its surface. Marcus approached slowly. Victoria caught his eye, the fifth building, the red switch hidden inside the prototype. Marcus gave no sign that he remembered. He placed his hand on the first scanner, the system illuminated beneath his palm. Lillian Reed's succession line confirmed Naomi motioned toward Victoria. Now you, Victoria walked to the table. As she passed Graham, he lowered his voice. You could still save your company. From you, from him, Victoria stopped. You think Marcus brought you home by accident? Graham asked. He had been watching you for months. He knew your route, your habits, and your weakness for public redemption. Marcus looked at him. Don't. Graham smiled. He wasn't beneath that pharmacy because he had nowhere else to go. He was waiting for you. Victoria turned toward Marcus. Is that true? The silence between them became heavier than the weapons in the room. Marcus had admitted watching Hail Meridian Tower. He had not admitted choosing that corner because he knew Victoria would pass it. No more lies inside my house, she said softly. We're not in your house, Graham replied. Victoria ignored him. Marcus, his face revealed the answer before he spoke. I knew you sometimes drove home alone after late board meetings. Pain moved through her with surprising force. You planned the encounter. I planned to approach you. You sat in the snow expecting me to stop. I didn't know the storm would become that severe. The nurse and the phone. That was real, but you knew I was watching. I saw your car. Graham watched with satisfaction as their trust fractured. The homeless man's secret identity story becomes less romantic when the homeless man selects his billionaire target, he said. Victoria remembered every warning Marcus had given her, every refusal and every carefully measured revelation. Perhaps they had all been part of the performance. You manipulated me, she said. I needed a way inside Hail Meridian and my home. No, then why didn't you tell me this before? Because I knew how it would sound. It sounds like the truth. Victoria, I expected you to lower the window, ask whether I needed help, and then call your foundation. I never expected you to take me home, but when I did, you accepted. Because I was freezing, and because it gave you access. Marcus did not answer quickly enough. Graham laughed. Trust is what desperate people request when evidence becomes inconvenient. Isn't that what you told her? Marcus stared at him with hatred. Victoria felt the humiliation of realizing Graham knew details from inside the mansion. Daniel had recorded or transmitted their conversations. Naomi pushed the gun harder against Isaiah. Place your hand on the scanner. Victoria approached the authorization panel. Her faith in Marcus had cracked, but the danger remained unchanged. Whatever his intentions had been on the street, Graham and Naomi could not be allowed to control Aegis. She placed her palm on the second scanner. Eleanor Hale's succession line confirmed the model city awakened. Light moved through the miniature streets. Wooden buildings illuminated one after another, while copper wires vibrated with electrical current. A low mechanical hum filled the chamber. The screen displayed a new message. Janus Guardians recognized. Activate emergency audit. Naomi ordered. Transfer control. There is no transfer option, Victoria said. Then find one. Graham approached the terminal, reading the system architecture. She's telling the truth. Naomi swung toward him. You assured me Janus could override the board. It can. But only the recognized Guardians can issue commands. Then make the system recognize me. I need Marcus's master key. All eyes turned toward him. Marcus kept his hand on the scanner. The key isn't a number, he said. Graham smiled. I know. It's a cognitive sequence. A pattern you memorized before your arrest. You can't force it from me. No. But Isaiah can. The elderly engineer looked up. Marcus stared at him in confusion. Graham continued. Dr. Cole helped design the mnemonic structure. He knows how your mother encoded mathematical sequences into music. Isaiah would never give it to you. He already did. The red circuit activated. A melody played through the speakers, 4 slow piano notes followed by 3 faster ones. Marcus's face changed. His fingers moved instinctively against the scanner, following a rhythm learned in childhood. The machine read the neurological response through changes in his pulse and skin conductivity. Take your hand away, Victoria shouted. Marcus tried. The glass locked around his wrist. Numbers flooded the screen. Master sequence reconstruction. 41%. Graham had turned Marcus's memory into the key. Isaiah struggled against the chair. I'm sorry. They used the recordings from our lab. Naomi stepped away from him, distracted by the rising percentage. Victoria looked at the model city. The 5th building stood near the far edge, partly hidden behind a transformer. A tiny red switch protruded from its roof. She could not reach it without leaving the scanner. But Isaiah could. Victoria met the old man's eyes and glanced toward the building. He followed her gaze. Recognition dawned. Master sequence reconstruction. 58%. Saya shifted his chair an inch toward the model. One guard noticed. Stop moving. Isaiah went still. Marcus's breathing became strained as the system extracted the pattern. Victoria, he said. When I tell you, lift your hand. The scanner locked. Your mother built in a physical release. 3 pulses through the authorization plate will open both restraints. How do we create them? The 5th building. Isaiah moved again. The guard stepped toward him. Carter fired. The shot struck the guard's weapon, sending it across the floor. Chaos erupted. Thomas pulled Victoria down as Graham's men opened fire. Bullets struck the metal table and shattered 2 miniature buildings. Helen killed the lights. The model city remained illuminated, casting long, distorted shadows across the chamber. Isaiah threw himself sideways. His chair crashed against the table, bringing his bound hands within reach of the 5th building. Naomi seized his collar. Victoria reached across the scanner and caught Naomi's wrist. The 2 women struggled over the gun. Naomi struck Victoria across the face. Victoria refused to release her. You were never strong enough to inherit Arthur's company, Naomi hissed. You mistook cruelty for strength. Victoria drove her elbow into Naomi's arm. The weapon fired into the ceiling. Across the room, Marcus remained trapped against the scanner. Master sequence reconstruction. 79%. Graham moved toward him with a portable drive. Marcus kicked one of the guards into Graham's path, but another struck his injured shoulder. Blood spread through the bandage beneath his suit. Isaiah reached for the red switch. Naomi saw him. She released Victoria and aimed the gun at his chest. Marcus shouted. Victoria caught Naomi from behind as she fired. The bullet struck Isaiah's chair. His fingers closed around the switch. He pulled it. The model city went dark. 3 powerful pulses moved through the metal table. The glass released Marcus and Victoria. Every screen displayed the same question. Execute Lillian Eleanor override. Warning. All connected Aegis architecture will be permanently exposed and disabled. Two confirmation plates illuminated. Marcus placed his wounded hand on one. Victoria placed hers on the other. Graham raised his weapon. If you do this, Hale Meridian loses billions. Victoria looked directly at him. No, it loses what your family stole. They pressed the plates simultaneously. The system emitted a deep electrical surge. Across the monitors, hidden networks appeared one after another. Defense contracts, surveillance programs, shell corporations, government payments, and secret North Star installations. Every connected file began transmitting to hundreds of journalists, regulators, and independent servers. Graham stared in horror. What did you do? Marcus watched Aegis expose the conspiracy that had erased him. What you were too arrogant to expect, he said. We gave up control, the prototype overloaded. Sparks erupted from the table. Carter dragged Isaiah away as flames spread through the wooden city. Thomas forced Naomi to the floor and secured her wrists. Graham ran toward the rail tunnel. Marcus started after him, but his injured arm failed. Victoria caught him before he fell. Let him go. He'll escape. Not anymore. Every screen in the chamber displayed Graham Vale's name beside millions of pages of evidence. Sirens echoed above the station. Not one police unit. Dozens. The files had been released too widely to suppress. Local authorities, federal agencies, and the press were converging on Michigan Central. For the first time in 3 years, the people hunting Marcus could no longer hide behind secrecy. He watched the model city burn. Aegis, the work that had cost him his company, his mother, and his identity, collapsed into flame. Victoria remained beside him. You knew I would pass that pharmacy, she said quietly. Marcus did not deny it. You used what you knew about me. Was any part of that night honest? He looked at her. The cold. That isn't enough. No. His voice broke slightly. It isn't. Police lights flashed through the upper windows, coloring the underground chamber red and blue. Victoria stepped away from him. They had defeated Naomi's immediate plan, saved Isaiah and exposed Aegis. But the alliance born inside the Hale mansion had been built on another concealed truth. Marcus had not entered her life by chance. And Victoria no longer knew whether the man she had taken home had ever needed to be rescued, or whether she had been selected because he believed her compassion could be exploited. Thomas led Naomi toward the service corridor. Carter supported Isaiah. Victoria followed without looking back. Marcus remained beside the burning prototype. Hours earlier, he had feared the world would never learn who he truly was. Now every news organization in the country would know his name, but the only person whose trust mattered had walked away from him. On a surviving monitor, the Hale Meridian board meeting continued. The directors were no longer discussing whether to acquire North Star. They were watching news of the largest corporate and military conspiracy in decades. Elena's voice came through the speakers. The acquisition is suspended. Graham Vale is wanted for questioning, and Naomi Hale has been taken into custody. A director asked the question that would soon dominate every headline: who is Marcus Reed? Victoria stopped at the exit. She looked back at the homeless black man standing amid the ruins of a billion-dollar technology. For years, Graham Vale had worked to erase the answer. Now Marcus would have to decide what truth replaced the lie. By sunrise, Marcus Reed was no longer invisible. His name appeared on every major news network in America. Dead engineer found alive after secret Detroit Operation North Star technology linked to illegal surveillance. Network homeless black veteran claims billion-dollar system was stolen photographs from Marcus's former life, spread across social media beside images captured outside Michigan Central Station. In one, he wore a blood-stained suit while paramedics treated his shoulder. In another, Victoria Hale stood several feet away, surrounded by police officers. The distance between them said more than any headline. Graham Vale had escaped through the rail tunnel before the authorities sealed the area. Naomi Hale remained in custody, but she refused to answer questions. Isaiah Cole had been transported to a private hospital under armed protection. The evidence released by the Lillian Eleanor override had reached too many destinations to suppress, yet much of it remained encrypted. Investigators could see the names of shell companies and classified programs, but Marcus's master key was still required to authenticate the most damaging records. That made him both the government's most important witness and the most valuable target in the country. It also made Hale Meridian vulnerable. At 10 that morning, Victoria entered the Detroit Foundation Hotel through an underground service corridor. The executive floor had been converted into a temporary command center. Attorneys, crisis consultants, and board members waited in separate rooms while security officers guarded every elevator. Elena met her outside the presidential suite. "You look terrible," she said. "So does the company." Hale Meridian shares fell 18% before trading was suspended. "How much value?" "Approximately $1.2 billion. Victoria absorbed the figure without reacting. North Star? Frozen by federal order. 3 directors have resigned, and 2 claim Naomi bribed them. Claim? They call the payments consulting fees. Of course they do. Elena lowered her voice. "The board wants you removed." Victoria stopped. "For failing to disclose your connection to Marcus? I met him yesterday. They're saying you brought an unidentified man into your home, gave him access to a classified server, and participated in an unauthorized operation that destroyed technology involved in federal contracts. We exposed criminal surveillance. The board's attorneys are calling that an unverified allegation. After everything released, the government has not authenticated the files. They're afraid." "Yes," Elena handed her a tablet. 9 directors had signed a motion placing Victoria on administrative leave pending an independent investigation. Naomi's allies were trying to remove her before Jonas could complete its audit. "When is the vote?" 3 this afternoon. "Call an emergency shareholder meeting. They suspended your executive access." Victoria almost laughed. For years, she had assumed that being chief executive meant she controlled Hale Meridian. Now she understood that control belonged to whoever could define the crisis first. "Where's Marcus?" she asked. "In the adjoining suite. Has he spoken with anyone?" "Only his attorney and 2 federal investigators. He refused to surrender the master key." "Good," Elena studied her. "There's something else." "What?" "Several networks received security footage from the night you found him." Victoria's stomach tightened. The video showed Marcus sitting beneath the pharmacy shelter before she arrived. Another camera captured him walking there 40 minutes earlier, studying passing vehicles. It proved he had been waiting for her. The media had already transformed the footage into competing narratives. Some called Marcus a brilliant black inventor who had used the only method available to reach a powerful billionaire woman. Others called him a calculating stranger who had manipulated Victoria's compassion to enter her mansion and company. A commentator repeated the question Graham had planted. Did Victoria Hale rescue a homeless man? Or did Marcus Reed choose his billionaire target? Victoria returned the tablet. Who leaked it? Graham, presumably. Then he wants us divided. Are you? Victoria looked toward the door connecting the 2 suites. Yes. She entered alone. Marcus stood near the window wearing a white shirt with his injured arm secured against his chest. Someone had shaved his beard and trimmed his hair. For the first time, Victoria could clearly see the man from the archived photograph. He looked less like a homeless stranger. That did not make him easier to recognize. You should be resting, she said. So should you. I have a board trying to remove me. I heard. Did you know they would use the pharmacy footage? No. But you knew cameras were there. Yes. Every honest answer hurt more than an excuse might have. Victoria closed the door. Tell me everything about that night. Marcus faced her. I knew you often left the tower alone after late meetings. I had observed your route 6 times. You followed me. I studied your security. That isn't an answer. Yes, I followed you. How did you know I might stop? Your foundation's public records showed personal donations to winter shelters. A former employee wrote that you sometimes carried food and blankets in your car. So you designed a situation that would appeal to my compassion. I chose a place where you would see me. And the nurse. Chance. Did you deliberately refuse the shelters and hotel? The shelters were genuinely full. The hotel had police outside. My home, I never predicted that. But once I offered, you saw an opportunity. Yes. Victoria turned toward the window. Was the tracking device already on my badge? I didn't place it there. That wasn't what I asked. I suspected someone was tracking you before you stopped. And you said nothing. I needed to discover who was receiving the signal. You used me as bait. The words remained between them. Marcus did not deny them. I believed your car and security team could protect you, he said. Daniel was part of their organization. I didn't know. You made assumptions with my life. Yes. His refusal to defend himself made her angrier. You could have told me the truth inside the car. I had spent years being arrested or attacked every time I told someone the truth. I was not those people. I didn't know that yet. But I was supposed to trust you. No, you were supposed to verify me. Victoria faced him. You keep making trust sound like an intellectual error. For me, it became one. And what was I? A calculated risk at first. The final two words changed the room. At first, she repeated. Marcus stepped closer but left several feet between them. I selected the corner. I watched your car. I hoped you would stop long enough for me to speak. Those things were calculated. And after that, I warned you to leave because I realized the tracker might lead them to us. I refused the hotel because police had been used against me before. I accepted your home because I was genuinely freezing, and because I saw a chance to reach the Hale archive. So Graham was right about how it began, and how did it end. Marcus looked at her with an openness she had not seen before. It hasn't. Victoria's expression remained guarded. You asked whether anything that night was honest, he continued. You were honest. Your mother's story was honest. The way Mrs. Brooks treated me was honest. And when you offered me a room without requiring my help, that changed what I believed about you. But not enough for you to reveal your plan. No, then it changed nothing. It changed me. Victoria wanted to dismiss the statement. Instead, she remembered Marcus shielding her from the laser sight, remaining beside the scanner while Aegis extracted his memory and choosing to destroy technology worth billions rather than let Graham control it. He had manipulated their meeting. He had also risked his life to protect hers. Both truths existed. I don't know who you are, she said. Neither do I. The answer surprised her. For 3 years, surviving required me to become whoever a situation needed. A veteran at one shelter, a mechanic at a warehouse, a man too confused to remember his own name when police asked questions. Eventually, Marcus Reed became the dangerous identity. And now the entire country wants that identity back. Do you? He looked out over Detroit. I want my name. I'm not sure I want the man who once carried it. Before Victoria could respond, Elena knocked. We have a problem. A live broadcast had begun on every screen in the command center. Graham Vale sat inside an unidentified office with an American flag behind him. His face was solemn. His voice was calm. My family invested in Reed Applied Systems because we believed Marcus Reed's work could save lives, he began. Unfortunately, Captain Reed concealed serious psychological trauma following his military service. Marcus watched without expression. Graham displayed falsified medical records describing paranoia, violent episodes, and delusional behavior. He claimed Marcus had stolen classified Aegis components, staged his own death, and manipulated Victoria to regain access to Hale Meridian. Then he presented the most damaging evidence. A recorded conversation between Arthur Hale and Marcus. Arthur's voice filled the room. You want vengeance, Marcus. I understand it. But if you activate the full system, thousands of people could die. Marcus replied, Then perhaps they should have considered that before they destroyed my life. The recording ended. Reporters immediately began calling Hale Meridian for comment. Victoria looked at Marcus. Did you say that? Yes, Elena swore softly. What was the context? Victoria asked. I had just discovered my mother died while I was detained. Arthur was trying to prevent me from releasing Aegis's military files. You threatened thousands of people. I was angry. I never intended to activate anything. Can you prove the recording was manipulated? The words are real. The order may not be. Graham continued. I am asking Marcus to surrender before more innocent people are harmed. I am also asking Hale Meridian's board to remove Victoria Hale, who appears to be acting under his influence. The feed ended. Elena looked at the stock alerts. Trading has resumed. We're falling again. How long until the board vote? Victoria asked. 4 hours. Marcus picked up his jacket. Where are you going? To surrender. No. If I stay near you, they'll claim every action you take is mine. You surrender, and they'll make you disappear again. Not with the entire world watching. The world watched plenty of innocent people disappear. Marcus looked at her. This is the only way to separate you from me. I am not asking to be protected from the consequences of my choices. This wasn't your choice. I arranged our meeting. You arranged the corner. I opened the door. Victoria, and I am still deciding what happens next. Elena's phone rang. Her face changed as she listened. What is it? Victoria asked. Graham is offering the board a settlement. Veil Dynamics will absorb all North Star liabilities and inject $2 billion into Hale Meridian. In exchange for what? Full ownership of the Urban Infrastructure Division and immunity from civil claims. Marcus understood immediately. That division contains the connected devices Aegis needs. He's buying the network legally, Victoria said. If the board removes you, they'll approve it. Victoria looked at the falling share price. A conventional CEO would save the company's market value. She would distance herself from Marcus, accept Graham's capital, and promise investors a return to stability. But Hale Meridian's wealth had been built partly on Lillian and Eleanor's stolen research. Protecting the company at Marcus's expense would repeat Arthur's original failure. How much of Hale Meridian do I own personally? She asked Elena. With the family trust and direct holdings, 21% economically. At the current price, just under $1.1 billion. Prepare to sell it. Elena stared at her. All of it. If the board accepts Graham's offer, you would destroy the stock. No, I'll give the shares away. To whom? The employees, Reed Applied Systems' surviving founders, and the communities whose data Northstar collected illegally. Marcus stepped toward her. You can't sacrifice your company for my name. It was never only my company, Victoria. Think. I have thought like a billionaire every day of my adult life. Every choice reduced to control, leverage, and valuation. She looked at Hale Meridian Tower on the television screen. That is exactly how men like Graham win. They assume no one will risk wealth to expose them. Elena slowly began to understand. If the board approves Graham's settlement, your transfer would trigger a change of control review and delay the sale for months, long enough for Jonas to finish its audit. Marcus shook his head. Jonas still requires both guardians. Victoria held out her hand. Then stand with me. He looked at it. This doesn't mean I forgive you, she said. It means I refuse to let Graham turn your betrayal into his victory. Marcus took her hand. I don't deserve your trust. You don't have it. What do I have? One last chance to earn it. 2:55 p.m., Victoria entered the Hale Meridian board meeting by live video. 14 directors sat around the polished table. Graham appeared from his hidden location on a second screen. Naomi's seat remained empty. The acting chairman opened the meeting. Victoria, this board is considering your immediate removal. I understand. You gave an unidentified individual access to classified company infrastructure. The individual is Marcus Reed, creator of the architecture Northstar attempted to sell us. That remains disputed. Then let him speak. Marcus entered the frame. Several directors began protesting. He placed Lillian's original mathematical notebook, Arthur's surviving Janus document, and the recovered Aegis drive on the table. "My name is Marcus David Reed," he said. "I founded Reed Applied Systems. Graham Vale stole my work, used compromised officials to erase my identity, and built Northstar from an incomplete version of Aegis." Graham smiled from the opposite screen. "A compelling story does not become evidence because a billionaire repeats it." "No," Marcus said. "This does." He activated Janus. Victoria placed her palm on the Hale signature plate. Marcus placed his hand on the Reed plate. The system began its emergency audit. Payments appeared on the boardroom screen. 7 directors had received money from Vale shell companies. 3 had transferred confidential data. Naomi had authorized surveillance of Victoria, Elena, and 2 federal regulators. The acting chairman tried to disconnect the display. Janus locked the controls. Graham's smile disappeared. "This information was obtained illegally." "So was my company," Marcus replied. A new file opened. It contained the unedited conversation between Arthur and Marcus. Arthur's voice said, "If you release the files without disabling the military controls, thousands could die." Then Marcus answered, "Then perhaps they should have considered that before they destroyed my life." A long silence followed on the recording. Marcus continued, "But my mother didn't raise me to punish innocent people for the crimes of powerful men. Help me remove the controls, Arthur. Then we expose everything." Graham had removed the final sentences. The board watched his credibility collapse in real time. Victoria turned toward the directors. "You have 2 choices. Reject Graham's offer and submit to a full investigation, or approve it and trigger the transfer of my entire ownership stake." The chairman asked, "Transfer to whom?" 40% to Hale Meridian employees, 20% to the families of Reed Applied Systems, 20% to an independent urban privacy trust, the remainder to communities illegally monitored by Northstar. Would surrender more than $1 billion. I would return what this company never had the right to keep." Graham leaned toward his camera. "She is bluffing." Elena uploaded the signed transfer instructions. Every director received a copy. Victoria looked directly at Graham. "You mistook wealth for the thing I valued most. And what do you value most? The freedom to walk away from it." For the first time, Graham Vale looked afraid. The board rejected his settlement 11 votes to 3. Federal officers entered Graham's office seconds later. Janus had traced his transmission and sent the location to investigators. He reached for a drawer. Agents forced him to the floor before he could retrieve the gun hidden inside. The broadcast ended with his face pressed against the polished wood of his desk. 3 years after erasing Marcus Reed, Graham Vale was arrested because he had wanted the world to watch him win. That evening, Victoria visited Isaiah at the hospital. His condition was stable. His family was traveling from Atlanta after learning that he had not abandoned them. He had spent years imprisoned under a false identity, forced to help Vale engineers reconstruct Aegis. Marcus sat beside his bed. Victoria stopped outside the door, listening as Isaiah spoke. "You survived by becoming invisible," the old engineer said. "But invisibility can become another prison. I don't know how to return." "You don't return. That man is gone. Then who takes his place? The one who tells the truth even when it costs him the person he loves." Victoria stepped away before Marcus saw her. The word "loves" followed her down the corridor. She did not know whether what existed between them was love. It had grown inside danger, guilt, and mutual need. Those conditions could create powerful illusions. But when Marcus had stood beside her before the board, she had not seen a homeless man, a hidden billionaire, or the architect of a revolutionary technology. She had seen the man who understood that survival was not the same as living. When she returned to the hotel, Thomas waited with an envelope. This arrived for Marcus. No return address, none. Inside was a photograph of Graham being led into custody. Across the back, someone had written, "Vale was never the highest level." Beneath the warning was a date and time, tomorrow, midnight, and a location, the roof of Hale Meridian Tower. Victoria looked out at Detroit's darkened skyline. Graham's arrest had ended the public conspiracy, but someone still controlled the part hidden inside the government. Someone who knew Marcus was alive. Someone who knew Victoria had chosen to stand beside him. The greatest betrayal had not yet been exposed, and this time, the invitation was meant for her. Victoria told no one about the message except Marcus and Thomas. By the following evening, federal investigators had taken control of North Star's offices. Naomi had been formally charged with conspiracy and attempted murder, and Graham Vale was being held without bail. The public believed the story was approaching its conclusion. They were wrong. The name behind the secret military network did not appear in the Aegis files. Every payment ended at a series of anonymous defense trusts. Every operational order carried the same designation. Orpheus. Marcus recognized it from his detention. The guards used that name when senior authorization arrived, he explained. I assumed it was a program. Perhaps it is. Programs don't request meetings on rooftops. Victoria studied the handwritten message. Who knew I would return to Chicago tonight? My location is under federal protection, Marcus said. Only investigators, your board, and your security team. Then Orpheus still has access to one of them. Thomas objected to the meeting. Marcus agreed with him. Victoria ignored both. At 11:40 p.m., she entered Hale Meridian Tower through a service tunnel, connecting it to an adjacent parking structure. Marcus accompanied her. Thomas and Carter monitored them from the floor below, while federal tactical officers waited beyond the surrounding buildings. Snow had stopped, but the wind remained sharp. They reached the rooftop at 11:58. Chicago stretched beneath them in grids of white and gold. From that height, the city resembled the illuminated model Eleanor and Lillian had once built together. A city that never went dark. A man stood near the edge. He was tall, white-haired, and dressed in a long military coat. Victoria recognized him immediately. General Nathaniel Cross. A decorated former intelligence commander, presidential advisor, and member of Hale Meridian's Ethics Council. He had delivered the eulogy at Arthur's funeral. Marcus stopped. Cross smiled. Captain Reed. You authorized my detention. I authorized an interrogation. Malcolm Vale introduced methods I did not approve. You left me there for 11 weeks, and you survived, as I knew you would. Victoria stepped beside Marcus. You killed my father. Cross looked almost disappointed. Arthur killed himself through indecision. He wanted the benefits of classified contracts without accepting the discipline secrecy requires. His aircraft was sabotaged because he intended to publish material that would compromise national defense. You mean material proving you stole Aegis? Cross looked across the city. Every important technology is taken from its inventor eventually. Governments cannot allow civilization-changing systems to remain subject to private conscience. Then why involve Vale? Democracies require distance between policy and unpleasant action. Corporations provide that distance. Marcus's voice remained controlled. What do you want? The master sequence. Aegis has been disabled. The commercial network has. The military core remains isolated. Warecross smiled. That is why I need you. Victoria understood. You never possessed the complete system. No one did. Lillian Reed was too intelligent to allow it, so you destroyed her son's life trying to recover it. We protected millions of lives. You created an illegal surveillance network. We prevented attacks you will never hear about. Marcus stepped closer. How many innocent people did you erase? Far fewer than the number we saved. The answer contained no guilt. Cross removed a small device from his pocket. Janus transmitted one final encrypted packet before disabling Aegis. It entered an offline Hale Meridian satellite. The The packet contains Lillian's complete adaptive architecture, and you need both of us to retrieve it, Victoria said. Arthur's final nuisance. Why would we help you? Cross pressed a button. The rooftop screen used for corporate events illuminated behind him. Mrs. Brooks appeared on it, sitting inside a moving vehicle. A man held a gun against her side. Victoria reached for her radio. Static. Thomas's wife was taken 30 minutes ago, Cross said. He does not know yet. You will release her, Victoria said. You continue to mistake authority for power. No. Men like you mistake fear for power. Cross held out the device. Activate the satellite or Evelyn Brooks dies. Marcus looked at Victoria. The same choice had followed them from Detroit. Surrender the system or sacrifice someone innocent. This time there was no physical override waiting inside a model city, or so Cross believed. Victoria accepted the device. A Janus authorization interface appeared. It required both biological signatures and Marcus's master sequence. We activate it together, she told him. Victoria, trust me. The words carried everything unresolved between them. Marcus had manipulated their first meeting. Victoria had almost abandoned him after discovering it. Neither had fully forgiven the other. But trust was not certainty. It was a decision made while certainty remained impossible. Marcus placed his thumb against the device. Victoria did the same. The satellite connection opened. Enter master sequence. Marcus began tapping Lillian's rhythm. Cross watched intently. Victoria used her free hand to remove the emerald ring she had inherited from Eleanor. She'd pressed its sharp edge into the device's charging port. Marcus heard the scrape. His eyes shifted toward her. She tapped twice against the metal, the signal they had established in Detroit. Prepare to release. The sequence reached 90%. Cross moved closer. Finish it. Marcus entered the final notes. The device displayed, architecture recovered. Cross took it from Victoria. For one triumphant second, he believed he held the complete Aegis system. Then another message appeared. Janus Public Accountability Protocol. Activated. Every rooftop screen came alive. So did thousands of screens across Chicago. Billboards, station displays, Hail Meridian devices and news feeds showed Cross standing before Victoria and Marcus. Their entire conversation had been broadcast live. Cross's face changed. You planned this. My mother designed the escape, Victoria said. Marcus's mother designed the truth. Janus had not recovered Aegis. It had recovered the last hidden evidence and distributed it publicly. Cross reached inside his coat. Marcus struck him before he could draw the weapon. The two men collided near the edge of the roof. Cross was older, but highly trained. He drove Marcus backward and struck his injured shoulder. Victoria kicked the gun away. Cross seized Marcus by the throat. You could have built a safer world, he said. Marcus forced his arm aside. A cage is safe too. He broke Cross's grip and drove him to the ground. Federal officers burst through the rooftop entrance. Thomas was first among them. Cross was restrained. Thomas crossed the roof toward Victoria. Evelyn, the vehicle was intercepted, an agent said. She's safe. Thomas closed his eyes with relief. Across the city, screens continued displaying the evidence. Illegal detention orders, aircraft maintenance payments, surveillance directives, and the authorization bearing Cross's digital signature. Arthur Hale's death was no longer an unexplained accident. Marcus Reed was no longer a dead criminal. History had finally recovered both men, though neither emerged innocent. 6 months later, Hail Meridian no longer existed in its previous form. Its military contracts were transferred to government oversight. Its urban infrastructure division became a public benefit corporation jointly owned by employees and community trusts. Victoria remained wealthy, but she was no longer a billionaire. Business magazines called her decision reckless. Some investors called it betrayal. Thousands of Hail Meridian employees called it the first time anyone had shared ownership, instead of merely promising loyalty. Victoria resigned as chief executive. She converted the mansion into the Eleanor Lillian Center for Ethical Technology, providing housing, legal support, and technical training for veterans and people experiencing homelessness. The first resident moved into the East Wing on a rainy Tuesday. Marcus watched from the foyer as Mrs. Brooks handed the young veteran a room key. "Dinner is at 7, she told him. "You don't have to earn the bed, but everyone washes his own dishes." "Yes, ma'am." Some rules inside the mansion had survived every revolution. Isaiah reunited with his family and became the center's research director. Thomas supervised security. Elena led the public benefit company created from Hale Meridian's civilian divisions. Marcus refused every executive position offered to him. Instead, he founded the Lillian Reed Urban Systems Institute in Detroit. Its engineers developed open-source technology preventing utility failures in low-income neighborhoods. The press estimated that his legal settlements and restored patents were worth $2.3 billion. The homeless black man Victoria took home had become one of the wealthiest technology founders in America. Yet he continued living in a small apartment above the Detroit Institute. "You could buy an entire building," Victoria told him during one visit. "I already have more rooms than I use. You sound like someone I know." "That person has questionable judgment. She once brought a stranger home during a snowstorm." Questionable. Their conversations had become easier. Forgiveness had not arrived in a single dramatic moment. It developed through evidence. Marcus testifying truthfully, even when it damaged his reputation. Victoria acknowledging her family's wrongdoing without using charity to excuse it. Both learning to disagree without turning distance into punishment. 1 year after the storm, Marcus returned to Chicago. Victoria found him beneath the shelter of the same closed pharmacy. He was wearing a dark wool coat. His beard was neatly trimmed, and a modest car waited at the curb. "You know there are warmer places to meet," she said. "I wanted to see whether you would stop. I considered driving past." "No, you didn't." She stood beside him, while light snow fell around them. A new emergency shelter had opened across the street, funded by the Hale Reed Community Trust. Its windows glowed warmly. Marcus reached into his coat and removed a key. Victoria looked at it. "What does it open? A house?" "You bought a mansion?" "No. 3 bedrooms. Detroit. Small garden. Terrible kitchen. An architect designed your billion-dollar system. But you couldn't select a decent kitchen?" "I thought someone might help me change it." Victoria studied him. "Is this a professional consultation?" "No." "A debt?" "No." "A 90-day contract?" Marcus smiled. "Nothing temporary." He placed the key in her hand. "I spent years believing a home was a place people could take from me," he said. "Then you opened yours before you knew whether I deserved it. I also threatened to throw you out. Several times. With justification, usually." She closed her fingers around the key. "I'm not asking you to rescue me," Marcus continued. "And I don't want gratitude confused with love. What are you asking? For the chance to build something neither of our families could build alone." Victoria looked toward the pharmacy wall where she had first seen him. Back then, she had possessed a glass tower, a mansion, and billions of dollars. Marcus had owned one canvas bag, and a name the world believed belonged to a dead man. Yet both had been homeless in different ways. He had lacked a door. She had lived behind too many. "Before I answer," she said, "I need one truth. Anything. If I had driven past that night, what would you have done?" Marcus watched the snow gather along the curb. "I would have tried again the next day. And if I rejected you, the day after that." "How long would you have continued?" "Until you listened." Victoria nodded slowly. "That is either romantic or deeply concerning." "I was hoping for romantic." "You'll need a better kitchen." Relief softened his face. "Is that a yes? It is a conditional approval." He laughed, and she kissed him before he could negotiate the conditions. There were no cameras waiting to define this moment, no board members calculating its value, and no reporters searching for the perfect headline. just a woman who had surrendered an empire, and a man who had reclaimed his name. They married that autumn in the garden behind the Detroit house. Mrs. Brooks stood beside Thomas in the front row. Elena brought documents to the reception and was ordered to put them away. Isaiah cried openly and denied it afterward. Instead of expensive gifts, the couple asked guests to support transitional housing and ethical technology programs. Years later, people still told the story as though its meaning began with wealth. A billionaire woman took a homeless black man home and had no idea who he really was, but that version missed the truth. Marcus's secret identity was never the most important revelation. The greater discovery was that a person could lose a company, a fortune, a reputation, and even his legal existence without losing the part of himself capable of choosing mercy. Victoria's greatest act was not sacrificing $1 billion. It was opening a door without demanding proof that the person outside deserved warmth. And Marcus's greatest achievement was not aegis. It was learning that accepting compassion did not make him weak or indebted. The world had tried to transform both of them into symbols. The billionaire woman, the homeless black man, the disgraced inventor, the fallen heiress. At home, they were simply Victoria and Marcus, two people carrying the failures of their families, two heirs to a technology that could have controlled millions. Two survivors who chose to build something smaller and more difficult than an empire. A life based on truth. On the first anniversary of their wedding, snow began falling over Detroit. Marcus stood at the kitchen window watching it cover the garden. Victoria entered carrying 2 cups of coffee and placed one beside him. "Do you miss it?" he asked. "What?" "The tower, the company, being a billionaire?" Victoria considered the question. "Sometimes I miss what I believed it meant. And what did it mean? That no one could ever take my home away." Marcus looked around the modest kitchen they had finally renovated together. And now? She rested her head against his shoulder. "Now I know a home isn't something one person owns." Outside, streetlights illuminated the snow. Across the city, buildings adjusted their energy use through an open system based on Lillian and Eleanor's original mathematics. No corporation controlled it. No military could hide inside it. Every resident could see what information it collected and decide whether to participate. The technology did not promise a perfect city. It merely prevented powerful people from becoming invisible inside the systems everyone else depended upon. Marcus placed his hand over Victoria's. Years earlier, beneath a closed pharmacy, he had believed the safest life was one the world could not find. Then a woman lowered her car window. She did not know his history, his intelligence, or the fortune hidden inside his stolen work. She knew only that the night was dangerously cold, and that another human being was alone in it. That decision did not erase their lies, repair their families, or save them from betrayal. It simply created the possibility that they might do those things together. In the end, Victoria had not taken a homeless man home. She had opened the first door. Marcus had chosen to walk through it. Together they made certain it remained open for everyone who came after them.